I will call to order the May 28th regular meeting of the Dayton City Council. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you hear that? It's never been that loud.
We're good. Good. All right, I will need a motion second for the agenda.
I'll motion. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Just so people know, I think if we start running late, I'm gonna request that we move, looks like S and T can both be moved out, but we'll see where we're at. Because we all know the long meetings don't make good decisions, so. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Agenda carries 5-0. And then we will do the swearing in, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight, it's my honor to bring up two firefighters that have completed 360 hours of their training to become a firefighter. One of them, Mr. Rabowski. One of them we were fortunate enough to get from another organization, firefighter Tiedemann, has, I won't say an erroneous amount of experience, but a fair amount of experience between a few different departments. So if Brad and Joe, if you guys would come forward, please. Age before beauty, right? Yeah. All right, gentlemen, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I state your name. Do solemnly swear to do my duty as a firefighter for the city of Dayton to the best of my ability, to serve my commanding officers with respect and dignity, to serve the citizens of the city of Dayton with compassion, courage, integrity, and to uphold the laws and Constitution of the United States of America, the state of Minnesota, the city of Dayton, so help me God. All right, well, congratulations. If significant others would like to, you have someone come continue? There you go. So we're going to have the families come forth and do the honors of pinning them. They probably wouldn't like me to do that, so come on forward, whoever's going to pin. While they're doing this, this again is a huge accomplishment regardless if you have experience or not, because as we just discussed in our work session, there's a lot of time away from family, friends, on anniversaries, Christmas, Easter, whatever, to serve the citizens of Dayton and those that trans us through. So significantly appreciate your guys' dedication to the organization. How's it going? You want me to help you? There you go. Nice job, guys. Thank you. Have a seat. Travis Henderson, if you come down, please. So this evening, I get the opportunity to swear in Travis Henderson as lieutenant for Station 1. Travis has been an integral member of this organization long before I came, but Travis has done a lot of work and put in a lot of effort to help me and to help this organization continue to move forward as it should. So tonight, take the opportunity to swear in Travis Henderson. So Travis. Yours is a little bit more lengthy than theirs. So.
Sorry. Okay. Ready?
I,
Travis Henderson,
as a lieutenant for the Dayton Fire Department,
as a lieutenant for the Dayton Fire Department,
do hereby declare
do hereby declare
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the City of Dayton,
and the City of Dayton,
as an officer of the Dayton Fire Department.
as an officer of the Dayton Fire Department.
My duty is to serve the people
My duty is to serve the people,
I swear to protect,
to swear to protect,
to safeguard and preserve life,
to safeguard and preserve life,
health, and property
health and property
against fire and other perils,
against fire and other perils,
and to maintain a proficiency in the fire service.
and to maintain a proficiency in the fire service.
As an officer,
As an officer,
I will never allow my personal feelings
I will never allow my personal feelings
nor danger to self
nor danger to self
deter me.
deter me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. From my responsibilities
My responsibilities
as a firefighter,
as a firefighter.
I will lead my fire company
I will lead my fire company
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
with fairness and no prejudice.
with fairness and no prejudice.
I will at all times
I will at all times
respect the property and rights of all.
respect the property and rights of all.
Accept the badge of my office.
I accept the badge in your office, my office.
There you go.
Too big a
As a
badge.
symbol of public faith
As a symbol of public faith
and trust,
and trust.
and I will remain true to the ethics of the fire service.
I will remain true to the ethics of the fire service.
I will constantly strive to achieve the objective
I'll constantly strive to achieve the objective,
ideals that the fire service instills
ideals that the fire service instills
as a member of the Dayton Fire Department.
as a member of the Dayton Fire Department.
I accept this self-imposed
I accept the self-imposed
and self-enforced obligation as my responsibility
as my responsibility
and make these promises so solemnly,
and make these promises so solemnly,
freely,
freely,
and upon my honor.
and upon my honor.
Congratulations, Travis. Awesome job. So, with supply chain issues and everything else, we actually have new badges on order for the department because of the metal, and it's not gold that we ordered, but it's delayed. So we would normally have a badge for Travis. Travis received his red helmet this evening. The department has moved to new helmets as well, just because of age. This is the new style, and it is missing the front badge indicating that lieutenant number. So those are coming. So we're a little bit challenged in this respect, but congratulations, Travis.
Been read up that style. All right. Okay, that gets us to the consent agenda. Let the room settle down.
It'll clear out now.
Thank you. That was a lot. Yeah, come on.
Thank you, Tony.
I got complaints. No, I'm just kidding. Travis, congratulations, buddy.
Thank you, Chad.
You bet.
Okay, we are on to consent. I need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Scott, Travis. Okay, any discussion on consent?
I have a couple
Go ahead.
questions. Gary, I think maybe you answered this during the work session inadvertently, but we had a cost of $5,500 in the fire department for echo data analytics.
Yes, Councilman Vachon, that is our new data mining service, so to speak. It takes our current records management system and extracts all that data, so it's real time for us. So I can go in and look at number of calls per day of week, hour. There's lots of different things that I can do with that particular piece of software, if you will. You will see that in Fitch's presentation this evening as well. They talk about data being the driver of lots of things that us and many other organizations are looking at. So that is an annual subscription in that capacity.
Okay, thank you. I had a question on item C also, and that is the resolution on the Hennepin County Fire Chiefs Association. I'm not questioning whether or not you should be part of it. I'm just wondering why we need a resolution to authorize this.
So this was on recommendation. So I am on the board for the Hennepin County Fire Chiefs. Been so for the last 5 years, I believe. The Hennepin County Fire Chiefs Association has existed since 1962, I believe it states. But there's been no formal adoption because what we're moving towards is a 501c3 as well. And so there's many steps. Our attorney for the association has recommended that each agency that is a part of it have the resolution adopted from the city council recognizing that the organization is a part of that organization, if that makes sense.
Because of your board position?
No, it has nothing to do specific to the board position, just as a clarification for the membership of the association as a whole in that, because it's never been formally adopted in the past.
It's never been formally tied to the city.
No, it has not, correct. So obviously, decisions that we make at that meeting can obviously impact each organization holistically or individually in that, on that note. So we want the council to recognize that we are part of it, and that was a recommendation from the attorney that we've contracted with.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Item E, the resolution approving Three Rivers Park District purchase. I am wondering, this one makes some sense to me, but I'm wondering if we can't get them in here to really talk about that West River Road trail, because what they're doing doesn't seem to be what the plan says they were going to do.
Sure. Yeah, Councilmember Vachon, we will most certainly request that. I do a meeting with Three Rivers Park District this Friday, and I will request that they come to the either next meeting or a future meeting here in order to explain what their what their updated situation is, what their plans are, if they have any. I know that you had mentioned in the past just personal conversations that they had changed their plans a couple times already in the past of what they wanted to do, whether one side of the road, the other side of the road, where they want the West Mississippi Regional Trail to connect to, how far off the road, so on and so forth. So I will most certainly request that when I meet with them this Friday.
Thank you.
Yep.
What were you thinking was out of line or
Well,
inconsistent?
they seem to be buying just random whole properties along a whole stretch of road.
Along the river.
And, right. And so, that was never presented in anything that I saw, including the task force that they put together, or we put together, I guess, before my time on the council to talk about planning this trail. It was going to be, it landed on the riverside of the road, which makes sense. But I can't follow their plan now where they're buying up perfectly good houses, I would say. I mean, I know they're willing sellers. But is the goal really to own that whole stretch of river? And if it is, then they need to tell us that.
It is amazing how quickly they can come up with the money too when something goes on the market. They can pop up $600K in a heartbeat or whatever it is.
Yep, I will most certainly request them to be at a future meeting.
Yeah. And just as a point related to that, on their website in the plan for that trail, they have allocated had allocated $174,000 for capital acquisitions for that whole stretch of trail. They didn't buy any of those properties for that money, so.
Yeah.
So something is not clicking for me, and I'd like to get that cleared up.
Yes, and it's a different fund. Along that item E, can we also, we know there's a roundabout going in there at some point.
Yes.
That east side is ours. That road's gonna be ours. I can see someone saying, well, since that's your street, this roundabout, you get to eat 20% of it or whatever.
Yep.
That property we would need, and getting property from the parks, once they've allocated it, is not pretty.
Yeah. We'll work with them when I talk with them on Friday. As part of our discussion on Friday was
Because
to
I just think that little
figure
tab
out how
that
we
comes
can get
out,
the easement on that one side, yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't mind if they use it, if they need it for their trail,
I
but
think the problem is it's
just for our,
under the state statute parks thing, they can't just,
so they can allocate out specific portions based on their allocations of money, and they can utilize different pieces of money
yeah.
in their funds to do it. And they have requested and done that on another piece of parcel that said, if you want a piece, let us know and we can write that into the deed for the
Yeah.
property.
I mean, this property is problematic anyways, right? I doubt they can get out, where's Jason? That tab where it connects down and,
42nd.
yeah. I can't imagine putting a driveway there, it's right on the intersection. But-
No, yeah, it's way too close.
So,
Yeah.
so this whole property is kind of almost landlocked to some extent, right?
They'd have to be given access to River Road, which would not be preferred.
Right. So this is one property where I wouldn't necessarily squabble with them getting it. I do have a concern though, as they buy up all the river properties, we lose that revenue too, so it's.
Question for you, Mr. Mayor. Is there
Yeah, go
something
ahead.
you would change in the verbiage then, as far as this resolution, so that they can identify that kind of stuff?
Well, that's
Or-
what, so. I
Yeah, I'll
suppose-
work with
yeah,
them,
we'll
yeah.
talk to, just to see what we can do there.
So they normally just work it out through an agreement with us.
Yeah.
And they'll have us, if it's something of significant value, it'll come back to the council to let you guys know of what's happening, but they'll just write it in the deed essentially, they'll deed it over to us, quick claim deed it, and then say it's ours, and then they'll just ask for an easement over it if they want to use it for a trail.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like in this our letter of support, like there's nothing worded in there as that, so.
I can add a whereas if you'd like me to. If you
I
want to
guess it
approve
kind
it.
of covers
Probably
our,
should be in there.
kind of
it
covers
should be
us
in
a
there.
little bit, I guess, as a policy standpoint, if it makes sense.
Makes
So-
sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good to get that in there.
You want to then pull that item and then follow it up directly after this with an adjustment to the whereas, or I would
Well,
refer to our
are
attorney.
they in a hurry for this? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, they are.
We were supposed to get it at the last meeting and that didn't happen.
There's nothing wrong with you approving it with the direction to make that amendment. So I think you could go forward with
Yeah.
it rather than pull it.
I think, yeah.
Okay, I will add that amendment.
And then, so, before you know what the amendment is, other than the fact that we want
We just want the
at
little.
least easement,
Yeah,
are
correct.
you gonna just wait and do that when you meet with them to see what they wanna do? or-
Correct, yeah, I will send them some draft language and say, does this work? And if it does, then
Yeah.
fantastic.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, it might be good to pull it off of consent and approve it separately, just to make it clear that that amendment is going to be part of your approval.
Okay,
Okay.
can make it
So we'll
a
pull it up.
K1, what do you want?
You can just make it E and we can just approve it right after the consent agenda, that'll be fine. Just keep it as item E.
Oh, I see. Okay,
So there was a motion and a second
Yep.
minus item E.
So we have to amend the motion.
yeah,
Yeah.
So we'll amend the motion to include some sort of language for easement on that property.
well,
Isn't it
gotta
pulling it
approve
out?
it.
yeah, we
Yeah,
gotta,
just be to pull
Yeah.
from consent.
I will
Yeah,
entertain
yeah.
a motion to pull it from consent.
I'll make a motion to pull
Alright.
from consent.
I'll second.
Thought we already got there.
Okay, any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, that motion to pull E passes 5-0. So now we can continue with
The rest of the motion.
the rest of the consent.
So now-
agenda. Well, the rest of the consent agenda. So,
Correct.
did you have any more?
I'm done.
Matt, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So, Chief Hank, I know I emailed you earlier on this, but just to get clarity, the liquor license that we're approving, I know some of them had failed last time we did a check, but I read your response, just so I'm reading it properly. They're now passed after we did the follow-up after the failure, is that correct?
Correct.
So all of these have now officially passed.
Correct.
Thank you very much for that clarity. That's all I have.
Travis, you have anything?
I do not.
Scott?
No.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of passing consent with the amendment to pull E, I, and E, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item E.
And now we'll make the motion to add language in there to include easement property, future easement property.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. All right, we are on to open forum. Open forum, limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. State your name and address, no council action will be taken, and items will be referred back to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Julie Teese, and I'm going to spell that for your meeting notes. It's T like in Tom, H like in Harry, I, E like in Edward, S like in Sam. I am up here regarding my May 14th comments that were incorrectly noted in the meeting notes. And so my last name is Thies. My husband's last name is Petticourt, and that is P as in Peter, E, D like in David, D, Y, C-O-A-R-T. And there was reference in our message that that there were 8 potential buyers that were coming to look at our property. No, I guess, did I say my address? I'm sorry. 16220 Territorial Road. Okay, so there were 8 potential buyers that came to the city to speak with Tina and other staff after Tina had left her position regarding our property, and the meeting notes indicated that they came to the council, which they did not. They came to the city. And so I just wanted that to be corrected in the meeting notes, and that's all that I have for this evening.
Okay.
Thank you so very much.
Anybody else here for open forum? Anybody online?
If anyone is here for open forum to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, please use the raise your hand function. Not seen it.
All right. So we will move on to staff consultant council updates. Zach?
Mayor, members of council, we've been busy and all of my items are on the agenda tonight, so I'm going to pass. So thank you very much.
Amy?
Just that we have open filing until next Tuesday.
Marty?
Mayor and Council, a couple of things. We've hired the 3rd seasonal, so we've got the 3 that we were looking for. I will be putting a staff report together for the next meeting. The other thing is regarding the park improvements project being delayed. I sent you guys an email today. It's unfortunate that we're in this position, but Paul has been unable to meet the deadline for the project. We are looking to see what projects we can possibly complete this year. I'm pushing to get at least the bridge at L.C. Stevens Park done. Some irrigation projects may be possible, and maybe some structures, but we need to work our way through that and see where we come out on the other end of this.
Go ahead.
And so I know I'd emailed you, but you will reach out to the Parks Commission too and send them the same letter so they can read his response. And then I know they had moved the meeting to try to accommodate. I think that was, if I remember correctly, because I've watched the meeting a while, it was the only agenda item, so they may want to cancel, but I'm not sure. I'll let you take care of that, but just please make sure that they're aware as well.
Yeah, and I will post something on the website as well, so residents are aware of it as well. Perfect. But there are some other things on the agenda for the next Park Commission meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Not your turn yet, Paul.
Some background music there, Paul, for
Paul's
us?
got an interpretive dance for us tonight.
We're gonna get into something really subtle here.
So, is this, how do I word this? Was the schedule that we gave, that was,
Who set the schedule?
where's the problem?
Yeah.
Is that pretty safe?
I don't understand why we're in this position. We've used the same program over the last few projects. It's difficult to say where we are at this time. We should have been ahead of this a little bit, but I think going forward we'd have to, I've developed a timeline for when we should have things hit. It just needs chasing. I don't know if Paul's got more busy.
That's really what I'm wondering.
Yeah. Paul set the schedule. We tried to push it to make sure it was tighter, and he said that's not possible. So we said, okay, we'll go with your schedule, which is the closest we could get.
Yeah.
But I believe he's the one that set the schedule, not us.
But is the schedule he's setting got some other restrictions based on, I don't know, state statutes or water, blah, blah, blah?
No, not as far as I'm aware.
It's just his capacity.
Yeah, I think it's just
Okay.
his capacity and relying on contractors for other parts of his job as well. Some of the civil engineering goes outside, so I'm sure all those things contribute, but it's not anything that we as staff have controlled.
Okay.
Is this size project too big for him to handle?
I did ask that question a little bit, if he had plans to expand his business, and he didn't say that that's what he wanted to do, but I feel it might be. I mean, the other projects that we've done are equally as big. Last year's project was probably
it
the
seemed like
larger,
that was gonna
with
be
Hayden
bigger.
Hills and Elsie Stevens and Donahue. That was a small thing, but I would imagine it's, a similar size project to this year.
Do we have sorry, I just saw this. Do we have a contract with him?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Gary.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thursday, May 30th, we have 7 individuals moving through the physical agility. Hopefully we can get a fair amount of those as new firefighters. And then on Saturday, June 1st, this Saturday, at 14431 Lawndale Lane, we'll be burning that structure down. So Lawndale Lane will be closed roughly probably around 5:30 in the morning till approximately noon on that Saturday, so we can burn that structure. We do have the assistance of our CSO to help direct traffic for Daytona. All the residents in that area have been contacted. Assistant Chief Astrup did some door knocking, so they're aware. And we also reached out and made contact with Daytona Golf Club to make sure that they're aware as well. So that will be happening again on this Saturday, roughly from about 8 until noon.
What was the address?
It's 14431 Lawndale Lane.
Oh, okay. Paul?
Evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. We're in the process of changing out the state seal on our badges from the old one to new one, so we'll be seeing new seals on all our officers' badges. Quite the process, so we'll see how it goes. Thursday, we have the school picnic, so we'll have officers there for that. And then a couple weeks ago, or last week, we had a rash of car prowlers in the neighborhoods. So make sure you're taking all your valuables out of your vehicles and locking them.
John?
June's going to be a busy month, not that May is not, but I think we'll have about 10 projects for the second meeting in June.
Hey.
Mayor, members of the council, I was just going to point out the memo that I delivered to all of you regarding the EDA and some action that the council would need to take to kind of correct the paperwork trail. But if you have questions about that, I'm happy to take them after the meeting or at another time that's convenient for you to give me a call. So I'll just point that out.
Thank you.
Scott?
Nothing.
Travis?
I've addressed the meeting items from last meeting that were about the part-time employees in a memo that I had put on consent. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me about that memo as well. So, but other than that, I don't really have anything. So
I don't have anything.
Nothing new for me.
I've got a quick thing for Marty. Marty, did we take over the trails through Riverwalk?
Not currently, no. We haven't taken them over
The
yet.
pavements? Okay, you should take a look at them. There's plants growing in the middle of some of those brand new trails, so
Okay.
you might want to have them address that before we take ownership of it, so we're not stuck
Okay.
dealing with it afterwards.
Yeah, we would definitely do a walkthrough before we do accept them.
Perfect, thank you.
A little thin on the pavement or cracks?
It doesn't look like it's, I mean, it's just that we got some strong plants over there. I don't know, but there's a couple spots where rollerblader going down the hill hits those, and they're going to be face planted. So it's I want to make sure we didn't own those because they should be fixed either way. You might want to reach out to them, but because they're on a hill, so that could be concerning for someone going down. Thank you.
Okay, move on to council business. We have a public hearing on item L. And just to remind everybody, with the public hearing, we will hear from staff. We will have questions for staff. We may have questions for some of the players in the ordinance, and then we will open up the public hearing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know the council's familiar with this, so I'll try to be brief in the presentation. So this is a public hearing for a number of items related to Kwik Trip. So we have in rezoning or zoning map amendment from BP Business Park to B3 General Business. There's a resolution for approval of the preliminary plat, final plat, the conditional use permit for motor fuel station, as well as a site plan review, which kind of covers the appearance of the project. Let's see. Okay, location-wise, so generally speaking, this is, I'm going to call this as the, it's hard to call it the southeast quadrant, but I'm going to do it anyways, for Maple Grove Parkway and Holly Lane. So we have Maple Grove Parkway, which is the main corridor, and then Holly Lane that's through here.
It's collected after Dayton Parkway.
Dayton.
Let's try Dayton Parkway.
Not Maple Grove.
Yeah, really?
Should have. Come on, where am I?
It's a great location.
Okay. The main access point into the property will be off of Maple Court, so that's probably where it went, kind of fell off the rails here. Critical issues related to the project. Number one is signage. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail, and then costs associated with the traffic signal. Both of these have relatively been resolved. Related to signage, the proposed signage that was submitted as part of the site plan exceeded what's allowed by the city code. The Planning Commission's recommendation was for approval minus signage. The signage is going to be handled totally separately, not related to tonight or this approval process. Specific to the traffic signal, staff is identified the need for a traffic signal off of Dayton Parkway and Holly Lane. Kwik Trip is willing to provide funds towards an escrow towards that intersection. So just to summarize it, the plan is we're going to do some traffic numbers to figure out what is the amount of traffic that we can expect into that project, and they would pay their portion of that cost towards the traffic signal. The exact dollar amounts we still have to figure out, so that'll be at a later date. This is the appearance of Kwik Trip. So it's fairly similar to other Kwik Trips. One notice difference with this project is that it does include the truck state, we call it a truck stop. There is, I believe it's 36 stalls for semi-truck parking that's here. The building is larger than typical Kwik Trip. That would include showers and other related items that you would have needed for a truck stop that you would not necessarily have for a normal Kwik Trip station. The council, when this went through concept plan review, The council did request a kind of a 3D rendering of what the station would look like from the road. So this is the intersection of the off-ramp from 94 and Dayton Parkway. And this is what it looks like in real life. So currently, so it's this is a panoramic view. So the view is a little skewed, but this is the off-ramp from 94 and then Dayton Parkway. There's a Semstone and then RDO in the center. We do have the applicant here to answer questions. And just to be specific, this is a public hearing, so notice was provided in the press as well as mailed to property owners within 500 feet of the project.
Anybody have questions for staff? Okay. Anybody have any questions for
The applicant.
the applicant?
The applicant is Dean George from Kwik.
I might, but can we still talk to him after the open forum if we want?
We can.
Okay.
We can shift it around.
Okay.
You want to do that then? Okay, I will open up the public hearing for item L. If anybody wants to come up and speak to this, come on up. Come on up. Just, that's okay. Just
Over here.
give us your name and you get sit down there. Yep, give us your name and address and you get 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Teresa Gaffer. My address is 11581 Shady View Lane, Maple Grove, Minnesota. On Wednesday, May 15th, I sent an email to all 5 city council members and explained the reasons why I believe the Kwik Trip truck stop proposal should not be passed. Later that evening, I received an email reply from Council Member Travis Henderson. Hello, sir.
Hello?
His exact words to me were, "If you have proof of your claims, please provide the sources. I've done extensive research on the matter and don't agree with the majority of your email. I plan on approving the proposal." I'm sure, sir, much to your surprise, the very next day I sent an email back to you doing exactly what you requested. I provided proof of my claims with screenshots from 7 different articles and reports off the internet that supported my concerns. I also provided my sources by including the website addresses. In my email to you, I requested that you do likewise and provide me with some of your extensive research as to why you plan on approving this proposal. You did not. Mr. Henderson, I don't know your motivations behind your email to me, but I want you to know that I received your email very negatively. It didn't come across as a genuine inquiry for information, but instead it seemed to have that its goal was to silence me and shut down any discussion. If that wasn't your intent, I apologize, and I think it's good then that I'm making you aware of my negative reaction so that you can get an idea how your communication is received by others, and perhaps you can be more mindful of your style in the future. However, if it was your intention to dismiss me and my concerns about the truck stop...
Ma'am, this sounds like it might be a thing between you and a council member. Can you kind of leave your comments up to the item?
I guess, and I thank you for your point, sir, and I guess my point was, when a concerned citizen expresses concerns, the response from a public servant should be that of civil, and it appeared that his concern was to not have any discussion at all, to bully me into silence.
Sure.
Okay. Regarding my concerns, I am going to have that discussion. One of my big concerns, I think most people would agree, is concerns about crime at truck stops. Prostitution, human trafficking, robberies, other illegal activities can often occur at such a highly transit and anonymous clientele at a location with fast and multiple escape routes. I'm sure you gentlemen have never been into a ladies' room at a Kwik Trip, but every one across across Minnesota I've been into has big signs in the women's room. Do you feel safe? Are you being coerced? Human trafficking, call this number. It's prevalent. It's out there. To believe that there will be no crime or an increase in crime in the area would be naive. Secondly, I don't believe it's really needed. It doesn't benefit the average citizen of the community, as we have other nearby options. The benefit to the truck drivers is also questionable, since they have two other options very nearby. It's easy to see how the truck stop proposal profits the Kwik Trip Corporation, but how does it profit the citizens of Dayton? And I would believe its value to the community is questionable. So, and the emails I received, the City of Dayton had underneath the signatures a little motto, which I really liked. It says, "We play outside, we've got roots, we're right here." The truck stop customers, by their very nature, have no roots to the community. The truck drivers are right here for the briefest amount of time, and then they're gone again without any concern or connection to the neighborhood or the community. A truck stop doesn't seem to me to match the values that are being put forth on that letterhead, and I hope that this is not the type of business or a proposal that you approve. Thank you, sirs. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming up. Is there anybody else here for a public hearing?
I do have someone online.
Someone online, okay. Take just your name, address? Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Abby Urick, and I live at 19272 Meadowview Lane. I live in Laurel Creek Development, which will be on the same road as the exit for Dayton Parkway. And I just want to say that everything that this lovely lady said, who I've never met, was exactly what I was going to say. She said it 100%. I just would like you guys to think about what this, especially the transient part of that. And I have also, as a woman, been in restrooms like that where it's very scary. And so I just wanted to, I wasn't planning to talk today, but when she said that, I was like, 100% what she said was correct. So I would just love for you guys to think about that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, we can go there.
All right, so Beth online, we're going to allow you to talk.
All right.
Go ahead and give your name and address. Yep.
Yep, if you can state your name and address.
Yep, Beth Burkfield, 11444 Creekside Court, Rogers. I'm also from Laurel Creek. Nice to see you, Abby. I agree with what both women said. I know that that's not going to sway a couple of the council members because it didn't sway them in 2021 when we had to fight to not get the truck stop in this spot. We have since grown like triple the number of residents in our neighborhood, many of whom are very concerned. And if, you know, the safety issue, the transient issue, if those aren't going to sway you, I'd like to bring up the point of what the Dayton vision was for this spot. They've talked about it in the past. It came up in 2021 when this was trying to go through, that this is meant to be the entrance to Dayton. This is the only entrance off of 94 into Dayton. And think of all the millions of dollars you've put into the interchange that the county has, the state has, all this money, and you want to put a big truck stop sitting in that corner. So that's the only thing people are going to see. When they see "Welcome to Dayton" sign, they're going to see a big, huge truck stop. And they're going to say, I will keep going and I will take another exit to go to a restaurant or go get gas or whatever. As the first woman said, and I agree with her fully, as residents, we have plenty of places. We can go get gas, all of that. The truck stop is going to be catering to highway drivers. And the planning commission noted that they passed this unanimously, which does not surprise me, because of what their thought process was. But they said this is going to appeal to people who are driving the highway, have animal trailers, semi-trucks, whatever. They're not people invested in our community. So when crime happens, it's going to be happening to us. We live nearby. There's other big neighborhoods that are on long territorial, along 81. You know, there is manufacturing, industrial, all of that, but there's employees there too. So if there's a rash of car break-ins, well, yeah, it might be an RDO. It might be a Chemstone. It might be in our neighborhood. So our concerns are not only, you know, the safety aspect, just the generic, a truck stop's not a good idea. Please think about what the city of Dayton planned for decades about what they want to do here. This is meant to be the opening to your city. This is what you want people to see. And if you want to be a city where families want to live and people want to work, a truck stop's not going to do that. It's a business park zone right now. It should stay a business park zone. That should be some sort of business can put in their headquarters or, you know, a medical office facility like they've got up on Maple Grove Parkway that they've already outstretched. Something like that. Everything south of 94 to Brockton, that's going to be residential and commercial. We all know that. And I'd be happy to see coffee shops and apartments and whatever's going to be there. But all those people are also going to look at a truck stop on the other side of the interstate, and do they want to be in that vicinity? Because there aren't going to be as many people driving around here as we would then go into Rogers, go into Maple Grove, go down to pretty much anywhere, Corcoran, anywhere. If we're afraid of this area by the truck stop, there's just not going to be the kind of traffic that Dayton wants to get in any of that area. You're going to get Dayton, Rogers, Maple Grove, Champlin, Corcoran, Hanover. All these residents are in this, where all these cities meet up right here, for the most part. And if you don't have something that we want to be going to, and that we feel safe, and that we think is adding to the community, then what's the point of it? And I'd also like to bring up the point that it's pretty clear that the broker that is dealing with selling this land is not making an effort to find other buyers. This came up in 2021, and he said, "Oh, I couldn't really find much, and this is the best we can get." And at the time, the council decided 3-2, I believe, against rezoning, which then that just threw out the whole truck stop plan because they wanted to wait it out. The interchange just got completed, looking for, you know, buyers, whatever. The broker's not trying to find anybody else. They can sit on this land. Kwik Trip can just sit there and wait out till they get a council that they're going to get a 4-1 or a 5-0 to get in their stupid truck stop, and then we're all going to be stuck with it. They don't care. They have money. They aren't going to be impacted.
Okay.
They're going to get the check, and that's it.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else?
There is one more. So Deb will allow you to talk, and if you could state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Debbie, and my address is 11584 Shady View Lane in Rogers. I also agree with the three women that have spoken. We're all in Laurel Creek. In addition to the issues that they've brought up, again, I also have the concerns about safety and crime. I'm wondering, does Dayton Police Force have enough officers to cover the additional calls that they'll be getting from the truck stop? My concern is also the traffic on the highway. Right now, when I leave my home and get on heading onto 94, heading east, I go out like 9:30, 10 in the morning. I'm always following FedEx trucks. There's at least 2 in front of me. Now, when I'm getting on the highway, I don't want to get off on 610 and either do those FedEx trucks. So there's at least a few of us trying to merge over to at least 2 to 3 lanes. Trucks that have been kind on 94 that have been coming from the west also don't want to get off on 610, so they're merging. I can't even tell you how many near miss accidents I've seen with truckers every time trying to merge over. You have a half of a mile to get down that ramp before you have to move over. That's getting onto the highway. What's going to happen when those 2 huge warehouse buildings are full with truckers trying to get over the bridge onto the highway in addition to the truck stop traffic. Right now, you can't fit 3 trucks over that bridge, and the way the lights are timed, you can't get, if I'm behind 2 trucks coming off the highway, I can't go straight because trucks are going onto the highway going east. It gets too congested in that area. So besides the traffic issues and all the other issues as far as safety and that type of thing, have you looked at the number of trucks that will be getting onto the highway and the speed that they're getting onto the highway? They are not going 70 when they're at the bottom of that ramp and trying to get over 3 lanes of traffic already 70 or 75 miles an hour. Have you looked and considered that traffic issue besides the safety concerns and the other issues of having the truck stop there? Thank you very much for considering. I know I've written to a few of you also, and I believe one of you indicated that it's good money for the city. Well, think about that. You know, there's always going to be money from somebody. Yes, it helps your tax base, but is that really the tax base you want it coming from?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Amy?
Nope.
So Paul, did you want to chime in here? Just to kind of give us an idea of what your concerns are?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we all have the same concerns as the residents do. Truck stops do tend to bring in a little more transient people, but they provided the crime stats from numerous other truck stops that they own, so which you've all seen in the past. Depending on the location and the cities that they're in, some are higher, some are lower. You're always going to have that concern when you have a convenience store with traffic and criminal activity. With the Kwik Trip that we currently have, we've had 79 calls since it's opened for service, which is, in my mind, low. I look at Dayton Gas Stop, we've had 42 calls in the same time period, but they're not open 24 hours. A lot of self-generated calls. When our officers are taking breaks there, they'll come out, notice a slumper, or somebody will come into the store and say, hey, somebody's having a mental breakdown. But a lot of it, some of it, probably 30 out of the 79 have been self-generated calls for service. We've had 2 thefts there since they've opened up for calls. 1 assault that was gone on arrival. Otherwise, it's been a lot of lockouts, minor calls for service, a lot of accidents in that corner just because of the location with 81 and the exit there.
Yeah.
And you had some calls recently about semis being parked there overnight, correct?
Correct. They're parking on that frontage road currently, and then the cut-through traffic.
Okay.
Cut through.
Thank
That road behind them is ours, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and I assume we posted it, and do they get tagged if you see them, or?
I don't think they posted a no parking.
Oh, wasn't it?
No, that was a bad idea to begin with, but I mean,
Well,
it happened.
The road, yeah. But, okay, can we have the applicant come up?
Mr. Mayor, did you want to close the public hearing, or did you want to keep it open?
You know what, we can close it right now, right? We didn't have any, so I'll close the public hearing. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I don't really have any questions. I got a good comment, though, to kind of address some of that. Here's my view on this deal. I believe, there's been a lot of resident response over this thing in emails to the council. At least I've gotten them. I'm
About
sure
2 dozen or
everybody
so?
has.
Yeah.
I think out of all the emails or correspondence that I've gotten, one resident from Dayton has responded.
I've talked to a few, but
95% of them are out of this Laurel Creek neighborhood, and that neighborhood is at least a mile from where this truck shop is going to be.
Half of them.
The whole idea that trucks are going to be driving through their neighborhood, it's crazy. Semis are going to get off and get back on. They're not going to be driving around the neighborhood. I don't believe it's going to add, well, I guess I can't word it that way, because no matter what you put out here, anything but a cornfield is going to bring more activity.
Correct.
And we're all kidding ourselves if progress, so-called progress, is not going to change what's there. 10 years from now, you're going to have possibly a 300-unit apartment building, and who knows what else is going to be there. It's going to be drastically different than it is today. As far as to me, the truck stop services our industrial area more than anything, and that's the purpose that I see it being there for. And it will also help reduce the city of Dayton residents' tax base. I don't see any reason other than my only concern is, as I said, the more you have, the more issues you have. If there was enough ground to have 50 stalls there, you're going to have more issues than if there was 10. So that is my only caveat to this whole deal, is I would reduce the amount of trucks, semi-trailer stalls. And that would maybe help reduce some of the incident. That's my only deal.
Mr. Mayor, members of the city council, that if I understand the fact that the reduction of the semi-stalls, but if you take the semi-stalls out, they will park on the side streets rather than in the facility.
So stalls are kind of the expected traffic, not the other way around.
Correct.
Where the stalls drive
So
the traffic.
so indirectly, you're meaning 36 trucks, there probably will be 45.
Correct.
Or they'll do like they do when you go across Nebraska, they just park on the off-ramp, because there's no place to park. They just block that up.
Yeah, which they currently do.
Yeah.
We'd rather have them contained.
Yeah.
Right.
So
the truck stop that you have over in Otsego?
Yes.
They have to my knowledge, there's no issues there. And there's not 10 or 15 semis that are parking there overnight.
Well, to my understanding, that's like a truck stop. There's like no wash facilities at all.
Correct.
There's none of that stuff there. And they
Yeah,
have
so-
actually quite the big fence that separates them and the neighborhood behind them.
There's a big white fence that butts up against the property lines, and then I don't think we have a travel center building there. That's a generic
don't.
Gen
You don't.
2 77,000 square feet building there. So
I know the residents do complain about idling trucks, but I mean, there's residents right behind the parking.
Right.
So it's,
So I had a couple of thoughts. I think the safety thing shouldn't go untouched about. I received 24 emails, again, all the ones I could find that would share their address with me, all lived in Laurel Creek. There was one that we got who asked not to be identified by name, but that lived in the neighborhood that was for the truck stop. But as far as the safety piece, so I have a unique experience in that my sister-in-law happens to be an expert in this field. She's a professor and teacher at the University of Colorado. She works with the National Institute of Justice, the Sheriff's Office in Oregon, the Great Plains Tribe, and law enforcement in 12 different states. So I had a 3-hour conversation with her around prostitution, human trafficking, and learned more, and scared me more to death on some of this stuff than I really wanted to be. When we look at this, and I explained the current Kwik Trip location versus the truck stop, she actually said the current Kwik Trip location is at a higher risk of human trafficking or prostitution given its location to the residents in the mobile home park, which is why I actually have a lot of concern about the parking of semis there, and I think we should probably get on that. So the biggest dangers to watch out for and the biggest at-risk groups are teenagers hanging out. So the questions I have for you are, do you guys have no loitering allowed signs, and do you enforce it? As in call?
I don't know about the signs, but we can enforce it certainly.
Okay, so I think that'd be good. Cameras are a big thing. She said having more cameras than normally required might be a helpful piece. 24-hour staff, which it sounds like from what I've read, it's going to be there. More police activity, and we are already doing this at the current location because I know our officers will go there to eat because we don't have a lot of late-night food options, and so that's helpful for them. Areas for intervention. So I didn't know this about the women's stalls because I've never been to women's stalls. I've only been to men's stalls, but having the signs up around that. I know I've been traveling a lot recently for work in airports. So every airport I've been to now, even the men's room, has those through the blue campaign?
I do think we have them in the men's room.
Okay.
If you go into a stall to go to the bathroom, I think if they close the door, it's
It
right
is
there.
there,
Yeah.
yep.
Perfect. So I think is that being there is important. So my question is, do you guys actively participate in the blue campaign, or there's another organization that she had talked about with me, which is Truckers Against Trafficking?
I don't know. This is the
Okay.
first I've heard of that, but I can find out absolutely.
Yeah, so I think I've been looking at these. I think it's good to get involved in them. The Truckers Against Trafficking, they train law enforcement, so if we feel our law enforcement needs extra help, they help with that. They also do training for truck stop employees to help recognize situations that would be good for that as well. And they have sponsors, so some of your largest competitors are monetary sponsors of theirs. I've talked with my wife, and we've decided that if Kwik Trip were to decide to be a gold sponsor or higher, we would personally donate $500 as well. So let us know if that's something you want to move forward with. But I think from a safety piece, as I've looked through this, if you're willing to take those steps, then I think we're doing everything we possibly can. Truck drivers are needed to get things to places. A high percentage of the goods we buy come via semi-truck, having worked for General Mills and just helped with logistics around getting food to places. Our food, almost all of it comes and gets to your store via semi-truck. There are semi-truck locations in Rogers and Maple Grove, both of which the citizens that emailed us about live in Rogers or Maple Grove, and yet they chose to live there despite there being a truck stop in that city. I think this makes sense given the industrial nature of the buildings around this area. I think it feeds that directly. The other question I had asked you last time you were here is about having electric vehicle charging, seeing as we have a electric semi dealership like right across the road from this. Do you have any update on that?
We have called out parking stalls for potential future EV charging area.
Okay.
It's kind of what we noted on the site plan to come at a future date.
Okay, perfect. I think that's everything I had to share and or talk about.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I mean, my objection is more fundamental than this. It's not about Kwik Trip. It's not even about the need. I drive, it's an 8-lane freeway, right? There's plenty of traffic there. We put a lot of trucks on the road from some of the things we've built in the vicinity of this. But the original vision for this interchange was to be the gateway to Dayton, and we invested significant money into upgrading the plantings, the appearance of the whole thing as being welcome to our city, and here's how cool we are. And I think that, that was the vision, that's what it was zoned for, and so I'm just stuck there. I know it's been 2 years, and another buyer hasn't come forward. I question the level of marketing that's happened, but regardless, if our goal is to look at this area and say, what do we want it to be when it grows up? This is not the right answer. If it's to serve the current need, which is trucks coming and going and from the cities, then I think Kwik Trip is probably a good partner in that regard. I just don't think it's the right location. There's certainly a need for it. I drive that road pretty regularly, and the entrance and the exit to that rest stop in Maple Grove are always full of trucks. The TA Travel Center in Rogers is always full of trucks, and especially this time of night. People got to get off the road, or they're out of their time, and they have to make their mandatory stops. I get all that. I'm sure that this location will be very successful for that. I just don't want it here. And it's just that simple for me. It was zoned for something else, and I don't think we should change it. I think we should wait for the right use.
So a couple of the neighboring communities, I had heard from some of their councils regarding truck stops in their area. I think the one caveat, so they very clearly said we should reconsider this. But there was a caveat there in that Kwik Trip is looked at as kind of a high, I don't know if you call it high class truck stop.
Premium.
I don't know, but I can tell you there was a lot of comments directed my way saying, careful what you're asking for here. I do have some of the same concerns Dave talked about. We did put a boatload of money into that to make it, look like a gateway, so to speak, and it is. I don't like the use either. I don't know, but there's the same, the same issues for it. We did put a lot of warehouses in the area. So, I don't know. You guys have any comments?
Yeah, I think before, when we talk about the gateway on that matter, and probably before my time, before then, there wasn't the cubes, there wasn't the Dayton 94 building, there wasn't that, 3 million square feet of warehouse space that was there. So it was a little bit better to envision what the gateway at Dayton might look like. But since then, we've added all these different users in there. And I think it kind of changed the shape of what I expect this area to look like. I drove back there today on my way home, and I was just, looking at the area, and I'm like, you're going to have to drive through industrial in order for me to see a gateway. And I'd hate to see this parcel sit here for 20 more years and not be used in the hopes that it might be something that it might never be. But there again, a council from now could change all that direction, but I align with Scott on, what is the industry that Dayton has along the 81 and Parkway, and how do we best service that, especially if we're going to be putting all the storage and semi-use there. I'd rather have those individuals have a spot to go to versus their our neighboring neighborhoods and things of that nature. I'd rather the crime, if it's going to happen, stay at that one spot rather than spread all over as trucks sit on roads and off ramps and things of that nature. Like, I get with growth comes all those other aspects, but I think just as a service to the industry in our industrial area, I think this makes good sense. Now, are we making the right decision? Only time will tell. But I don't see this as being one of those uses that is necessarily a bad one in the long run either. To the point that they make on the truck stop on 94, that's eastbound only. So I mean, between Minneapolis and Clearwater, you don't have a spot if you're heading westbound.
Correct.
I mean, other than Rogers.
Monticello, but not a truck stop there.
Sure, but I just looked at like what the iState or whatever the truckers maps, like they rate these truck stops. I mean, Rogers is getting a 9 out of a 10. The Clearwater one is a 10 out of 10. Don't you guys have the Clearwater one?
We have Clearwater 10 out of 10. Yeah. I will say that, so it's our goal to put up the best retail establishment that we can, whether it's a normal C-store or a truck stop. Our truck stop down in Davenport was ranked by the people who use it, top truck stop in the country, by people who travel I-80 or any other interstate in the country. I think that's 2 years running now. So it's our intent to put up the best possible truck stop that we can. And if there's concerns about crime that you guys have, we have the same concern. We don't want them in there either. So we do put cameras on our lot. You can't go anywhere on our lot without being spotted by a camera. Just the way it goes. So when Chief said that there's only been, a couple of thefts and, only a handful of calls that weren't, made by the police department themselves, I was happy to hear that, because it's our goal to make it as safe as humanly possible when we put up a site.
Yeah. I mean, just with everything to the east of this property with RDO, Semstone, King Solutions, and then the proposed property on the north side of Territorial Road there, like, that's all semi and warehousing space. That's like, to me, it just makes sense to have that kind of use on that property, especially if that whole area is going to be slated as that. Like, just working within the confines of what we've decided to do in the last 4 years to that area. So that's where my mind sits.
I don't have any more. I've already said my piece. I supported it 2 years ago. I'm for it now.
Can we get, John, can you come on up?
Yeah, and nobody can tell me that, nobody can tell me better than John that he hasn't done his job.
Yeah, can you just kind of, go ahead, state your name and address.
My name is John Roush. I'm with Cushman and Wakefield. I'm a land broker, which I've been for the last 25 years. I got a team of 4 people that work exclusively in the Twin Cities area with me, selling land. We've sold thousands of acres in the Northwest Metro. Rogers, Dayton, Maple Grove. We work with guys like Amazon, Ziegler, Caterpillar, RDO, Semstone. And our team is sold. We've been one of the top producing teams in North America, actually. So we want to sell this property for RDO. We don't care to who. We approached Kwik Trip on the front end. We know these folks. I've got a young daughter, I got a young son, I got a wife. And, you know, when we propose different sites to Kwik Trip in the past, and if they're in marginal areas, they'll say no. Because they make their employees it's an ESOP, and they call them partners. They don't call them employees. Sorry, Dan. So we've been trying to sell this land for the last 4 years. I checked earlier today. We'll take all comers. We don't care if it's a Kwik Trip or Circle K or whomever. My job and my fiduciary responsibility is to RDO, the owner, the landowner. They're one of our clients. We respect them. We like them. They do a safe store, and as you all know, they come from the food service industry, not the petroleum industry. They got dairies. They got. I don't need to tell you about Kwik Trip, but they take care that their food is priced right, and they're going to be the biggest grocery store in town and probably one of the biggest restaurants. So to let you all know, the users that have come forward that have wanted to be there have been other industrial users. You got a railroad track that, you know, right before 81. So that between there and the freeway, you've got an industrial pocket, whether we like it or not. So the industrial users are who we've seen. We've had used car dealers. We've had other truck stops. We were under contract briefly with Circle K, which does a holiday franchise. Zach, you and I talked about that earlier today. That was a brief stint. A lot of folks that like to service trucks and trailers and be next to Semstone. And I sold the King Solution property at one point. So it's people that service those sort of businesses. And that's what it's set up for, and I think it's great. You guys have lots of other land. I know we've talked with the Planning Commission. That will be wonderful, wonderful hearts of the city, and you got a vibrant community, and you're growing responsibly. And I'm a landowner here. I love it here. So I'm part of the community, you know, whether I like it or not. And I'm endorsing it, and I'm trying hard to sell it, and there's nothing more I can do to bring a different type of user here.
And just out of curiosity, why do you think that property is hard to move? I mean, it's right on the freeway. Mm-hmm. Is it just its elevation? Is it?
No, you have other like industrial users. Industrial users like to be next to other industrial users or people that service them. You will not, I promise you, 25 years of doing this, you're not going to get, a hotel, other than a transit-oriented hotel. You're not going to get a medical clinic. There's still plenty of room down in Maple Grove. They need to be next to schools if it's pediatric, or next to the hospital. You know, take the runoff there. We could probably sell it for another warehouse. Definitely another truck repair, truck wash, that sort of thing.
Think we get a restaurant over there?
It'd be difficult. It'd have to be in conjunction with something else, unless it's just going to be a Denny's or something that pulls them off the interstate. There's not enough daytime or nighttime traffic, so it'll fail.
Okay.
As a family restaurant right there.
Yeah.
You know, it'll just be transit oriented.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we've tried. We've called thousands of them.
Anybody else? Question?
So Tim Hutner is on. He's on the EDA, and he's endorsed. The EDA has endorsed and agreed with Councilmember Henderson as he's expressed his opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you too.
Can I just clear one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So John said we're an ESOP. So it's actually an election our owners make to give 40% of the profits back to the coworkers. So we don't own it officially. It comes in the form of us as a cash bonus at the end of the year. So it's money that they could retain themselves, but they choose to give it to people who work in the store. That's kind of a thank you to keep the store as good as we can make it, as clean as we can make it, as safe as we can make it, as profitable as we can make it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do real estate. Thank you.
Okay, so we have approval, rezoning. Should we be doing?
You can either do them individually, Mayor, or you can do them as one joint. Whatever we'd like to do.
Anybody have any discussion about the cup? conditional use.
So, Mr. Mayor, so there's two action items. The first is the ordinance amendment. So this is an amendment to the zoning map to rezone it from a BP Business Park to B3 General Business. And then the second action item is the resolution which approves the preliminary plat, final plat, conditional use permit for motor fuel station, and the site plan. One item on the resolution, I'd like to make amendment to item number 8 related to the traffic signal that Kwik Trip would submit a escrow rather than a cash payment.
Is the county going to be okay with the light there? I'm assuming so, if we're talking about it, but when we turn the road over to them, are they going to be okay with the light there, Jason?
Yeah, the city has full jurisdiction as of today. We would be...
I'm more about when we turn it back over to them.
We would be communicating with them. I think full expectations are that it will be signalized when justified.
Okay, thank you.
We don't expect any negative
And
feedback.
if that doesn't get a signal added before we turn it over to them, then they get the escrow, or we keep the escrow?
It's a good detail I don't think we've worked out.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I was gonna say. It'd be great if we could keep it. They're gonna ask us for 20% anyways. We might have the money, but we gotta pay for it.
Think ahead.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'm waiting
Go
for
ahead.
Scott. It's gonna his.
We would have an escrow, I'm going to call it an escrow agreement or something similar to that effect.
Okay. Scott, did you want to
Did I want to what?
keep us moving?
Keep it moving? Yeah, I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, I don't think-
I mean, the traffic light, the money that's involved in it, I mean.
I didn't know if you wanted to make the motion, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, I'll make the motion, but, I mean, we do need to have some kind of language that there is going to be some money for the traffic light.
Yep. So, yeah, mayor's members of council, the idea would be to add it to the developer agreement with
Right.
Kwik Trip's approval, that would be a cash payment related to the amount of traffic generated by, if there's Kwik Trip here, how many additional traffic turns and lanes and all that stuff would be happening at this intersection. To be able to have those users be able to get out of the intersection safely without causing any left turn issues back onto the parkway, because it is kind of a larger intersection at that point, and it's hard to get out of that area. So
do we do a traffic count now?
So can I just hear?
And then traffic count after?
Yeah, that's the, well.
Ballpark idea.
We saw condition 8 come up on Thursday, and we said, I think we can get you guys more accurate data as to the amount of vehicles, trucks, cars that are using our sites on a daily or weekly basis. So we'll do that, but we just couldn't get that number for you by the time we had this meeting tonight.
Correct.
So we're going to run some numbers internally and get you guys an accurate number for the traffic generation on our site, and then it'll get applied to some cost allocation for the light, if that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Both or just one?
Both, just do them
Yeah,
both,
we'll
get it done with.
do them both.
Okay.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Anything else we gotta clean up with that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against say no.
No.
All right, that was 4-1, and it passed. All right. Item M.
Thank you. This is approval for the final plat for, a revised final plat for Dayton Fields 4th edition. This was previously approved by the council in December 2023 as a 2-lot subdivision. The intention at that time was the developer had 2 buyers. Since then, one of the buyers has dropped out of the project. The developer is requesting approval of 1 lot and 1 outlot. And so the only change since this was previously approved in December is that there's an outlot, or as previously it was a lot. So the intention is once there is a buyer for outlot A, it would be replatted as a lot and block, and you would see this again.
I'll motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
Discussion? I thought when we did this that there was some sort of dependence between those 2 lots, and I don't remember what it was. Maybe it had to do with the ponding, or there was something that the fact that they were both being developed at the same time. Doesn't ring a bell with anybody.
Yeah, so Mayor, members of council, what I believe you're referring to is that this was the first time we ever had a plat that was doing both lots to two individual businesses that were not related. So we normally would plat one at a time and then have one person. So we had on the development agreement, we had to essentially break out each individual's portion, which I think is what you're mentioning. And then we had the developer be the person who had to front all the money in order to get it through, because we had to get the dollars from one spot in order to get the milers filed. So that was the first time we've ever done two lots with two different applicants at the same time with one developer. Normally, like I said, it's either one full developer doing everything, and then they handle everything and pay it, hand off like residential or whatever. But.
And who services that pond?
It'll be private.
It will be private, okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's shown on the aerial is a wetland.
Oh, the existing one would be part of the city system.
Oh, it would?
Yeah.
So we would,
Yeah, so
okay.
the constructed ponds on the sites are both responsibility of the individual owners.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Other than that, we've got a motion and a second. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Carries 5-0. Item N. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. I've had it.
That's a John.
Thank you. That's a John one. And a Zach one too. So, I'm going to say off and on, because I think we've discussed this a number of times, the need or the desire for a referendum in the future on a number of different topics. And the last discussion, I believe, was at the April 23rd council meeting, and it kind of led into the question of what do the residents want? And so let's ask. And the direction that the council gave to staff was to do a little bit more research. We had a conversation with Peter Leatherman of the Morris Leatherman Group on opinion surveys and how that functions, and how as a scientific survey. So I believe we have Peter here.
I don't see him here today.
We don't have Peter here yet.
30 minutes early, so.
We are 30 minutes early. That's a good sign. I guess so. Maybe what my suggestion would be is to push this off in time until Peter
Till he shows up.
Yeah.
I was on time, but you guys didn't take so
Yeah, so the idea would be to have, so Morris Leatherman Company has done this type of survey for a lot of communities, including Champlin, including Lakeville, including Apple Valley, numerous groups, and then Blaine, I think he did one for
many cities.
Yeah, many cities. So he's done this over lots of cities, and he uses statistics and math to figure out who he's calling, when he's calling them, what he's looking for, information. It's all about what the city council's looking for information. So I wrote some of these things down that we've heard in the past, like should we adjust residual speed limits? Should we look at building a sports complex? Should Dayton move to another county? Should we start levying additional dollars for the ability to speed up the build out of LC Stevens? Should we start levying additional dollars for trail connectivity? So what we're looking for tonight is topics, and I was hoping that Mr. Leatherman would be here to help us with those topics, but basically looking for topics from the council. We could generate some questions, send those back to the council and say, do these look good? Essentially what he has is he has a set of staff that's behind him, and all they do is make calls all day long to different communities, asking questions. And the questions are not 5-second questions. They will spend 30 minutes roughly on the phone with them, from what he had mentioned. I mean, so it's a dedicated amount of time. So it's like
hang up within 30 seconds.
Correct. Yeah, so if somebody hangs out within 30 seconds, then he will then pick somebody else with the same criteria of that person. Like they're black, in their 50s with kids or something along the lines of that. And he has all the data from a national database. He goes, it's amazing what you can find on the internet.
So are we going to tackle this, or are we going to wait for him to get here?
So we can talk about it a little bit maybe, then.
Seems like, yeah.
Yeah.
We
We
could. We're going to repeat it again, but.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably true.
That's probably smart.
All right, we will.
Let's just move
Put
in.
Put it before S.
Yeah.
A little recess, bathroom break.
Do we need a recess?
No?
I don't know.
Already?
Just trying to help you guys.
We
pass
still
the
got a
time.
couple hours yet, buddy.
Why don't we move?
I'll leave them, but not yet, Travis.
Mr. Mayor, member of council, I will recommend putting N before S. That way it's the last item on the agenda. If we get to it, great, and we can always move it around.
Okay, I will do that just for now.
Just for now, yep.
There are no objections. Okay, item O, fire study.
Yep, Mayor and members of council, we have BG Youngman with Fitch and Associates here to give us the presentation on the fire study, and then we will look for acceptance of that fire study at the end. Take it away, BJ. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm BJ Jungman, senior consultant with Fitch and Associates. Here to present the final draft of the study. Just a reminder, Fitch and Associates is a nationwide public safety consulting firm, been in business for 4 decades. We've consulted in all 50 states, every Canadian province, and 12 other countries. And again, we do police, fire, EMS, and emergency dispatch consulting. When we look at studies, we really kind of look at this balanced approach to things. And really, on one side, you have risk and performance, demand, operations, staffing, and growth. And on the other side, you have service expectations, the fiscal realities, kind of long-term sustainability. And really trying to figure out what's the acceptable level of risk for a community and how do you plan for that. The good thing is you have a very well-performing department that is similar to what we see in many other suburban or developing communities. You have many of the same challenges that other communities have, and we'll talk about those as we go along, particularly weekday daytime response with paid on-call staff. We started this project back in January 2023. We kicked it off in March of 2023. We met with staff and council in April and May in 2023. And I would just note that there was a significant delay trying to get usable data out of the dispatch center. We didn't get that until August of 2023. I was back with you last fall, November-ish, to talk through the data report. We prepared a final draft and then received feedback, and then we're here today. And we've had multiple meetings and communication with the city staff throughout the process. You know that your community, as well as anybody, just really quick here, is you have a very limited water supply in much of your community where you do actually have municipal water supply, and it's not enough to really provide fire protection services. It's more of a domestic water. And also that you're outpacing what your comp plan projections are. And the point of that really is that population density is an indicator of static risk within a community. That's not the only driver of risk, but it is definitely an important factor of risk. You know your comp plan well of what your 2040 future land use. The reason I talk about this is that dynamic risk can really be increased with specific populations and socioeconomic statuses. The National Fire Academy talks about a handful of things such as older adults, people with disabilities, people who smoke, low-income populations, ethnic minority groups, and low income. So all of those tend to be drivers of fire risk. Here's a side-by-side of response times. And the biggest variable here is the E, where the firefighters drive to the station. Currently, you're primarily a paid-on-call response. So once the firefighters get the call, they have to drive to the fire station, get their equipment on board the fire apparatus, and leave. Any change to your model would bring the firefighters into the station and eliminate that drive time. So your biggest change in impact to your response time really can be eliminating that drive time to the station, where they can live up to 10 minutes away from the fire station currently. We covered these, and I know we're crunched for time, so I'm not going to spend much time on it, but this was in the data report. The biggest thing here is you're really transitioning to a suburban community from an industry standard standpoint. When you look at population density, you're currently considered rural. Once you hit about that 12,000 mark, you're going to be considered suburban. And you currently meet the volunteer rural response time of 14 minutes with a 12-minute 90th percentile. But once you hit that 12,000 population, the industry best practice is really for a volunteer department at 10 minutes. So the time comes down as the density goes up. When you look at projections for service, the blue line is a projection based on the last 5 years of call volume, projecting out really the next 6 years. And in 2030, you're about a little over 800 calls. And then we did some static projections a 4, a 6, and a 10% year over year. That's generally what we're seeing. Departments' growth is anywhere from 4 to 10%. 6 is about the average of what we see. Notable is 75% of the demand is related to medical emergencies, and that's absolutely what we see, somewhere between 70 and 85%, depending on the population in the community. Really, the type of development you have in the next couple of decades is going to impact that projection significantly as you start to think about what you're bringing to town. Again, notable here is the highest demand for service is really that 8 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m. time frame, where you're at about 1.1 call per hour. So basically, during that hour of the day, every 10th day you're having a call during 8 to 9 a.m. or 9 to 10 a.m. So you got a 10% chance each hour during the day for a call. The bottom is your fire staff turnout by hour of day and day a week. And what you see in the red there is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., particularly Monday through Thursday, you have the lowest turnout of your paid-on-call staff. And frankly, your biggest risk for service disruption or the inability to be reliable is that daytime, weekday call volume. So your highest demand is when you have the lowest turnout, and that's not unique. That is a national issue. That is definitely an issue we see in Minnesota, and particularly around the metros, as communities are grappling with suburban staffing of fire departments. So we looked at really where your call volume is. So the left is a heat map of all your calls. The right is the difference between rural is in green and orange is in suburban based on the number of calls in that half square mile or quarter square mile square. And what you see is that you do have some hot spots, the most distant point from your current fire stations. And most of your development is slated to happen most distant from your fire stations. And that's also an area where you're already considered suburban by the density of call volume. I'm just going to skip to this. Basically, with 2 fire stations, you can hit, well, I'll go back. With 2 fire stations currently, you can hit 72% of the call volume with an 8-minute drive time. That does not include the time for the firefighters to get to the fire station. That's from the fire trucks leaving the fire station. And what you notice is that bottom left or southwest corner is where you have the least coverage from an 8-minute drive time standpoint. Adding a third station somewhere down in that neighborhood will raise your capture rate for an 8-minute drive time to over 90%. When you consider adding that fire station, we think a methodical approach is very important to make sure that you have both the physical and the human resources aligned. Because just because you put a fire station there, if you're still heavily relying on a paid-on-call staff, you aren't guaranteed that you're going to have paid-on-call staff interested and available down there. And as you build that out, you're also going to need leadership at that station, which requires some experience. So we do think if you're going to procure land, the next thing is doing a pilot facility. Do something that's 100 or 200,000 where you have enough to put a fire truck and some gear, and see if you can recruit people down there. Try and staff it, and then that gives you an opportunity to recruit and develop them and train them. If that works out and you can get enough staff down there, then it makes sense to design a permanent facility and build it, and then getting additional equipment that is more permanent down there. So we broke out our recommendations or alternatives, and what I would tell you is the first alternative that's kind of assumed in this whole report is the do nothing alternative. Nothing says you have to do anything in here, but it does give you the alternatives. So currently the stations have no additional room for equipment or sleeping quarters. They're pretty tight. We talked about the alignment of physical and human resources for Station 3 if you were to build it. And really the long-term best practice for Dayton would be 2 strategically located fire stations, one in the south and one in the north. Really between Station 1 and 2 currently is ideal in the north end of town. So we talked about some of those things in the short term already. And the midterm is building that facility. Currently, fire stations are going for $12 to $15 million in the current dollars. Obviously, if you build it in the future, it's likely going to cost more. And then the long term is looking at those 2 strategically located fire stations. Currently, your model is primarily paid-on-call staff with a full-time chief and assistant chief. Really, any movement down that staffing continuum will eliminate the drive time to the fire station. Our recommendations for staffing is to have 3 full-time administrative staff that can handle most of the weekday, daytime calls, since the majority are medical calls that they can handle with 2 or 3 people. So we think either a fire marshal or fire inspector and your assistant chief. They range generally about 120 to 150,000 fully loaded with benefits is a range that we generally see. And then determine the interest in the paid on call in the south end of the community. Solicit input and look at a duty crew during select hours and letting that demand or that turnout help determine when's the best time. We see departments sometimes jump into 24/7 duty crews, and the challenge with that is the same problem you have today with turnout during the day, during the week, is the same problem with expecting them to sign up for daytime duty crew shifts. Is you have the least amount of turnout because most people work a daytime weekday hour shift. So if you were to do that and paid them approximately $25 an hour, it's $219,000 for 1 seat 24/7. That doesn't include any training, that's just the coverage, just to kind of give you a position of reference. We do think it would make sense to have some reserve funds available so that if your system does fail sooner than we think it will, you have funds to transition quicker to a more career or a more staffed operation. And again, that 4 to 7 years, we tend to see people expand to more duty crews, more hours, and make sure that you start to prepare your stations for overnight accommodations. And then long-term, either 24/7 duty crews or evaluate the need for additional full-time staff. Dispatch center you don't own, but it is a very important piece of your operation. It's owned and operated by the county sheriff. Really, dispatching by unit will be important. One of the challenges was to get good data is the way that your dispatch limits your ability to collect and analyze data to find out how long it's taking the dispatch center to process versus how long it's taking the firefighters to get to the fire station versus the trucks driving to the scene. So changing that up a little bit would be helpful. Also with that full-time staff, reducing when you're calling for your paid-on-call staff to come in. Again, if it's those minor calls or those medical calls, not toning them out and asking them to come to every single call will help with that. There's some other things in there about advocating for call-taking procedures and quality assurance. They currently don't have those resources. When we look at your fleet, we think combination vehicles would fit the organization well due to the lower utilization compared to some of other organizations and really the risk that you have. Really, we think that if you bought a Quint, that's the second line down, which is a combination engine and ladder, could save you $2 million instead of having to buy another engine and have 4 engines and a ladder. And long-term, really combining an engine and a heavy rescue, again, could save you from having additional vehicles when the heavy rescue is due to be replaced. So this just lays out those recommendations. One thing that's important here is lead times are 2 to 4 years on these apparatus right now. They're not turning them out very quickly. Prior to COVID, it was about 12 to 18 months, and now you're looking at 2 to 4 years, depending on the manufacturer. An engine is currently costing about $1 to $1.2 million, a ladder $2 to $2.5 million, a Quint $1.8 to $2.2 million. Again, it all depends on how you spec it and what you get on it. So if you're going to have a Station 3 and you have a construction plan, ordering those apparatus early are going to be important so that you have the resources when you have the station built. And again, consider adjusting your fleet replacement schedules to include variables such as reliability, cost of ownership, and condition. Age is generally what we see, but the best practice really is to have these other variables because the reliability and cost of ownership can be much higher, and it would be more resourceful to get rid of that apparatus sooner if you're starting to have issues. When we look at equipment, really some equipment will be determined on a long-term plan if there's 3 stations. So some of these to be determined depends on whether your long-term plan is to go to 2 strategically located stations or if you're going to stay at 3, and also what your model is going to be. If you go to a more staffed model, whether that's duty crew or full-time, you don't need as many air packs because you only need them for the riding seats that they're in. You don't need one for essentially every firefighter. Same thing with the gear washer. There's no reason to buy one if you're not going to have 3 stations long term. Don't invest in some of that stuff that you could consolidate back to 2. So having a comprehensive list and plan of all the equipment would be helpful. On the training front, you have a comprehensive training schedule. One important thing is you have a number of new firefighters here that really need skill repetitions to gain their confidence and competence, and you really have no training facility readily available to them. The example I use in the report is if they wanted to go do ladders, they'd be throwing ladders on the side of the building and potentially damaging the building. There's no real training facility easily accessible to them to train in.
What do other cities do in that, for the ladder example? What do other cities do? They just use the side of their building?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people will use the side of the building. They make do with what they have. Training facilities are becoming more prevalent, though. And some of them are built where they don't necessarily have an aluminum cap and they have some opportunities, or they have an interior mezzanine that they could ladder to, things like that. So
Thank you.
I would just tell you newer stations generally have all those things built into the fire station. Everything but live fire training is built into most new modern fire stations so they can train on site. That gives you a lot of ability to make it easy to train. Also, if you get a call, you can leave the equipment there secure and you don't have to worry about someone getting injured. So that's the nice part when you design a new station. You can include a lot of those things. On the training front, again, you're doing a lot of great things. There's an opportunity to maximize a hybrid approach where you do some online training and skill-based training. Also, a switch to a competency-based training. Right now, most fire departments operate on the number of hours you sit in the seat for training, not that how many skills you've done and that you're competent at them. So going to a competency-based training really has skill checklists for every major skill to make sure everybody's competent in it, not that they sat there for so many hours. And we're an advocate of changing to a more competency-based training because the better utilization of their time, and it makes sure that they're proficient. So we also think ensuring training specific to each responsibility is good with industry practice. Lots of people focus on driving the fire apparatus and pumping it and then the basic firefighting skills and EMS skills, but things like your fire officers, are they getting the leadership training that they need, right? And developing that, and that's a common thing for fire departments to work on. I know the department's working on establishing new policies and guidelines and just making sure that the policies and guidelines align with the training and competency checks. So that the expectations are standard, so you don't write one thing here, do it differently here, and have checks that are different here. You want it to be in alignment across there. So those are the short-term recommendations on training. On the fire prevention front, we think a full-time fire marshal or fire inspector will help ensure important code provisions are present, particularly as you develop. Your opportunity to make sure that those things like access are built when a building's built, and that you can get all the important pre-incident plan information so firefighters have information at their fingertips when there is an emergency there. The other piece of that is when you do hire somebody like that, they can implement a comprehensive community risk reduction program, which is really a targeted data-based approach to fire prevention and injury prevention. Instead of just going to all the schools and providing information or going to certain businesses, you can really say, here's where our targeted approach should be. Here's where our risks are, because we've gone through the data and we've looked at where we're having the fires, where we're having the injuries, where we're having the issues, and really target those things. So currently, from an organizational administrative standpoint, you have the chief, assistant chief, you have 2 captain slots. One's vacant at Station 1, and you have 2 lieutenants. Congratulations to Councilmember Henderson on his promotion to lieutenant tonight.
Thank you.
If there was an additional station added, again, you'll need to think about the leadership and how do you create that succession for them. We spoke a little bit about the policy and procedure manual, but it's important to have relevant and up-to-date policies and procedures. Providing opportunities for input from line staff on these decisions are important, and full-time staff can really help with weekday, daytime coverage, for instance, and ensure the department has appropriate documentation and planning. One thing I noted in the report is federal OSHA has an 832-page update to the fire brigade standard out for public comment that they say within 6 to 24 months they plan to publish. That has a number of administrative responsibility changes and training changes for fire departments and EMS providers. So that standard hasn't been updated since the early 1980s, and it's a big swing. So we expect we're a state OSHA state, so we have to follow the state or the federal OSHA, and we anticipate that those will impact us in the next couple of years here.
I do have some specifics because what I'm hearing is they're devastating.
Yeah, I'm losing them off the top of my head right now, but I mean, it is anything and everything, like fire gear, enforcing fire gear at 10 years has to be destroyed. It's a recommendation in an NFP now. It will now be an OSHA violation if you don't. So every 10 years, all the fire gear has to be replaced. That includes helmets, things like that. Again, this is all draft and it could change. There's a ton of training requirements around every job. You got to do a risk analysis on everything that firefighters perform and show that you have training for every specific job performance requirement.
Sure.
Again, a lot of these were National Fire Protection Association standards and they are best practice, but they weren't required out of OSHA. Now they are calling them up on in OSHA. So you have a lot of references to standards that are adopted by NFPA that will now become enforceable by OSHA. So there could be some significant impacts to the fire service, for sure. We are keeping our eyes on it, and it's definitely going to have an impact if it were published as it's written today. The chief alluded to this a little bit earlier, but data recommendations is really, the data is generic and not granular enough to determine the areas impacting the response times the best. We're using what our experience is to project that today, but really you have an opportunity here to, with a records management system, to collect better data so you can do a better evaluation as you implement different things within the organization. We talked about pre-incident planning and risk reduction information, and really making sure you have quality assurance to have complete and accurate data. Firefighters are not great at writing reports. It's been a long-term problem, and the data isn't great. Another thing at the national level is next year they're rolling out a new national data collection system on the fire side, so it should be more updated. Again, the current system was built in the 80s. So, with that, I'll stand for any questions. I know I ran through it quick, but wanted to be efficient because I know we have a full agenda tonight.
Any questions?
Sure. One thing that it doesn't seem like the report spends much time on, 75% of our calls are medical.
Yep.
And we're not looking at equipment or ways to improve response to those kind of calls. I don't think any of that was really addressed in the report.
Yeah, Mr. Councilmember, we didn't have a lot of granular data on it, so it was tough to say even necessarily what types of medical calls they are, other than they were medical. I know you have the standard medical gear, and I know the chief has taken the step to train people to the EMT level instead of EMR level. We have seen elongating response times of private EMS providers, so that's why we didn't touch like which EMS calls they should go on or anything like that, because that quick response from a city public safety agency lots of times will beat a private ambulance provider to provide initial care to a patient.
I guess I was struck by that too, given the volume of medical calls versus everything else, and it just seemed like that was like the elephant in the room.
Sure.
It just seems like we should be doing something aimed at that.
You thinking like ambulance service?
I don't know.
Because there's an extreme shortage of ambulance workers, correct? I mean, this is just from what I know. I mean, you probably know, but my wife works in the industry too, and that's what she was saying, is they have a really hard time getting people to do it. Soon if we had an ambulance,
I understand it's a challenge. It doesn't make the problem go away, and I wish the report would have spent more time.
I don't disagree with you one bit, yeah.
If I can just add to that, there is a shortage of EMS workers, just like there is firefighters, volunteer firefighters. What's unique about Minnesota is that there's not much control locally over your ambulance provider. Whoever owned that license years ago owns it today. And it's pretty challenging to overtake that at this point. There's some efforts at the state level to try to change the regulation on that, so to modernize it, but they're not there yet. So your hands are a little tied, other than if you want to locally first respond. That's about your best local option.
Any other questions?
This is kind of expanding on that EMS portion. Like, if it was another leg of the service that the fire department would provide, I don't think you would get any volunteers to step up, at least right now, for that. So I think that would be kind of like, if Dayton decided to go down that road to provide that service, that would be a couple full-time positions, at least 4 or more for just EMS provisions. just from my understanding, I just reading the temperature in the room from the guys that I work with, like, ain't nobody about ready to start doing that, I guess, as far as Dayton Fire goes. Chief, you got anything?
Mayor and members of the council, yeah, I mean, it's, it's not a, well, I guess it depends. Some agencies have been able to gain some revenue, if you will, enterprise funds from BLS and ALS service, but at the same time, understand that's at Medicare and Medicaid rates, which is not going to make us rich by any shape of the imagination. And then the costs associated with that is not advantageous from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't know that I was thinking necessarily of a specific target. What I was thinking simply was a lot of our calls are medical. A lot of our calls don't require ladder truck, engine, tanker. They don't need that. They need an emergency vehicle. And it just strikes me as odd that we don't have something, at least down in this area, where we can improve that portion of whatever, 75% or I don't remember what it was now. But,
yeah, so from that capacity, we are looking at, like we have a rescue that we have here, and like next year's budget, Rescue 11, we're splitting, or in the CIP, we have scheduled $100,000 for another rescue, more of a suburban type vehicle with medical equipment, and then spreading off our grass rig, so we have specific grass rig, because right now that vehicle is too large. So that's where we've been able to reduce that CIP from about 500,000, 450 in the past. We've dropped that down, I think, about 100,000 a piece in the CIP with those, so we've been able to reduce that cost. The biggest challenge that we have is that delayed response from our service provider, as BJ alluded to. I'll give you an example. The other day, we had a motorcycle accident on South Diamond, and that particular truck was the Princeton truck that responded to this geographic location, because they did not have, North Memorial did not have an ambulance able to respond. We sat on and closed down South Diamond for probably at least 30 minutes waiting for that next available truck. So us, as BJ said, trying to bridge that gap, hence my push to move towards EMT and be able to help those that are in need during that wait, has been extremely helpful in that capacity. But to your point, I mean, that is probably 75% of our calls. If we could only educate the public on the appropriate use of 911, honestly.
He's not
good.
I have volunteered in Mercy ER for 3 years and know exactly what you're talking about.
So Gary, are you saying like the long game of that is like putting bodies into like a more efficient vehicle rather than like
yeah,
the
we want to
fire
be
engine?
efficient. Yeah, but we're not going to spend. We're going to talk about a ladder truck soon. We're not going to send a $2.5 million piece of apparatus to respond to the stub toe.
Yeah, it just, yeah.
I hear you.
Anybody else?
No, well, I guess I didn't expect us to solve that gap tonight. I just wanted to point out that it was mainly a gap in the report, that we didn't talk more about it since it is 75% of our calls. The other comment I want to make is that I'm pretty disappointed that this report is a year late. And we could have used this, well, when we expected it a year ago, it would have been helpful. I'm glad to have it, but I don't know what all went haywire, and I'm not so sure I care anymore. I'm just disappointed that we're this far off schedule.
Understandable.
My biggest question is, what does accepting this mean?
Yeah,
I mean, we've already paid for it, so it's immaterial if we accept it or not.
Yeah, so because Mayor and members of council, because the report has been done by Fitch, we need to accept it as a document that we're going to be able to utilize.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it's not a Bible by any means, we have to follow it word for word, but it's going to be basically no different than the other studies we've done in the past, no different than the David Dronos one when we did that a couple of years ago. We accepted the report of what they did for the work. Doesn't mean that we approved it and said it's going to be the Bible.
Okay, so we're accepting the product they produced.
Exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily bind us internally.
Correct.
I did have a curiosity that I'd like to, so I don't know if you can go back to the 3 station solution.
Yeah. Oh, that one?
Yeah. I don't remember, at that time, that bottom station is right on that forfeit property.
Yeah, we just chose the portion just to figure out an area.
Okay, so that was us giving you information?
Yeah, correct.
I just thought it was very odd.
No, it just happens to be the one that we've been talking about, and at the time when we looked at it, we said, okay, that's a potential spot for it. We didn't have any other potential spots at that time. We said pick a spot down there, and that was one.
Now, one option that I didn't see in here that would have been nice is, I mean, right now we know, and at the time, we were looking at this property, but it still would, I think, to me, make sense to consolidate those 2 stations. Is there, if we were to go this route, is that consolidation not as beneficial as?
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, if you look on, you probably don't have it in front of you, but page 15 of the report has an optimized 8-minute response time, which shows the best location if you were to have 2 fire stations. I didn't put it in here for the purposes of time, but it shows you where the optimal location is to have the most coverage with an 8-minute drive time. So it shows up in that northern corridor where to put that centralized station between Station 1 and Station 2. And that wipes out any property issues or anything. So there may not be property available where it says, but that is just a GIS, like, if we could optimize it and say that was available, that would be the best place to put it.
And Mayor, members of council, just for your information, it's Fernbrook and 125th Street. It would be location 1. Location 2 would be Diamond Lake and Xanthus. And BJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on that, we would end up with a 96% capture rate of 8-minute response time?
Correct. 8-minute drive time would get you 96% of the calls based on what you had.
I'd be curious to know what happens if you put it behind Public Works, what the percentage would. It's only like a mile.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like only like less than a mile down the
Depends on
road.
where your call is, I mean.
Right. Do you have something to say?
No.
My concern is more about, like, when I look at I agree, it makes sense to try to get to the 3rd station where it will ultimately be versus trying to move it, like we have to move the other 2 eventually. My concern is I think where we'll ultimately have to be will be decades until we get water there.
Mm-hmm.
City sewer and water.
2050 plus. Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to weigh when I think about this is like, okay, how do I weigh, we have a spot now that could work, whether it's this spot or in that general location. We have a general location that could work to get us there. I always thought it made more sense closer to 117th than where Dayton Parkway will be.
Well, that was the original study.
And then the other one further north, probably off of by Public Works, I thought eventually, but we have to have the land. So that goes back to the other conversation.
Well, yeah, we can get the land and maybe the water that.
Well, I don't know if we can get the land.
So, Mayor and members of council, what we can do is we can ask, like I said, BJ's team just to run it based on new routes and new information that we have from, noted here is that this one doesn't have Zanzibar paved, so that's why it's not connected on Zanzibar in the graph.
That's true.
It also does not have Dayton Parkway completed either, so that's why you can't go only so far down 117th Avenue without getting there, because Dayton Parkway wasn't completed at that time, which doesn't go into the GIS system, so.
We should have one too that looks at Dayton Parkway in its final state.
So what we could have is Stantec has run GIS numbers for us before of response times and drive times, whatever, and we can have them run it too. They have our maps up to date. We can ask Stantec to run it, and it doesn't take overall that long. I think we've done it in a week or so and brought it back to us. And we could have them do that too, with response times and drive times and whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Get them back to council, most certainly like a weekly update or even on a future council meeting, if that's what you'd like.
To me, it just seems like if we can, we should be shooting for that. Wherever we park it now, it's going to be there in 80 years.
That is the direction that we're using.
That would be the goal of us. Yeah.
That is the goal and direction of staff.
Correct. Anything else? I've got one more I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
Gary, when it comes down to like providing proficient data. They notated in this report about making some changes as far as like working with dispatch and things of that nature. Is that something that, aside from Echo, I'm guessing Echo is going to need that data too, but they're going to need some changes with how we operate with dispatch to mine that data correctly? Because right now, like, I think it's identified as gaps.
So what we are doing, Mayor and Councilmember Henderson, what we're doing is we've added data or Echo data analytics in to pull real-time data from our records management system. We haven't had that in the past. So now, as real-time data continues to update in our RMS system, I can go in, I have a dashboard. We're looking at having a council dashboard or potentially a city view dashboard that can be viewed online. But what that does for us is it gives us that real-time data today. The other thing that we're doing, as BJ alluded to right now, is we are moving forward and changing our records management system. So come September, we will be, the contract is being generated right now from First Due is the records management system that we're moving towards. There's multiple reasons to move to that. It's about, you'll see it at a future council meeting. I believe the contract on an annual basis is around $10,500 in that capacity. So that will help us with gaining more efficiencies and better data. Right now, data out of our current records management system is difficult to data mine, if you will. From a dispatch perspective, unfortunately, we don't have, as BJ said, we don't have a lot of control over that. The one thing that I would love to see Hennepin County Dispatch add is GIS within the dispatch center. Because right now, if I make a change for our box alarms, as alluded to during the work session, or make any of those things, it takes them forever to make those. And it has nothing to do with dispatch. It has to do with those resources that are allocated from the county to the dispatch center. So right now, on a separate note, we're trying to get county dispatch to monitor all of our activity. Because right now we have the fire main that we go en route on, and then we have our operations channel. The problem with our operations channel is that isn't monitored from a safety perspective. So right now, Brooklyn Park is doing a trial period where if it's a significant event with 2 pieces of apparatus, fire alarm, extrication, fire, whatever, fire automatically go there, so I take that one out. We move to what's called Hennepin Fire and Hennepin 3 and 4, or could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It goes all the way to 12.
I've heard that called out before. I was wondering what was going on with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what they're trying to do is get dispatch to monitor that, so from a safety perspective. The problem is Hennepin is not set up to, they're very limited, and I asked the question at the last Hennepin Chiefs meeting, when they train dispatchers, they train them to, it's law enforcement eccentric dispatch system. It works well for Chief Inga and the law enforcement officers. It doesn't work that well for fire. So Ramsey County has really done a good job in looking at how they dispatch. You know, they have St. Paul and everything else. Recently, you may have seen them on the news talking about their dispatch center. But we're trying to force the hand, so to speak, collectively from the Chiefs Association to have them make our ability from a fire dispatch more robust, because right now, literally, they have one dispatcher that's dedicated to fire, and they barely have 2. So often, even if Brooklyn Park in their trial asks for a Hennepin 3 and 4, they're doing it to be monitored. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's not because they don't have the staffing. So again, it's those resources that we need to have Hennepin County Dispatch put into play. It's no different than what we always complain about here is roads from Hennepin County per se. Trying to get them to put those this is another aspect of that from a safety perspective from the Chiefs Association within Hennepin County. Long answer to your question, but there's lots of moving pieces as it relates to it.
That's what I want to get to. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll take a motion to accept the fire study.
I'll make a motion.
Second. second, where it gets dropped. It got dropped.
Okay, that's fine, I'll second. We're just approving the acceptance of the report, correct?
Correct.
That's fine.
All right.
It's just approving the motion, it doesn't have to vote one way or the other either way.
That's all it is.
That's
Yeah.
all it is. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I guess.
All those opposed say nay.
Thank you.
Thanks, BJ.
We could have done that 35 minutes ago.
Okay.
Now we go back one.
Do you want to go back to N, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor?
I think your guy's out there now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go back to N.
Okay.
Is that him?
Yes.
All right. You want to haul him in here, John? There he is.
12,000 slides.
Thank you. We're back to 20 minutes ahead of schedule.
Too bad time doesn't fly like that.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we get much for slides. On this.
Just have,
Okay. Peter, you can come on up here. So this is Peter Leatherman of Morris Leatherman Group, and none of this has anything to do with the...
Oh, here, go back, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, gotta click on the slide again. Oh, there we go. There we go.
So just a real brief
Don't worry about any of this stuff.
reintroduction. At the last council...
Keep going. Great.
Okay.
Oh.
April 23rd council meeting, we had some discussion about upcoming potential questions for referendum. Council directed staff to do a little bit more research. Staff had a conversation with the Morris Leatherman Group and brought Peter Leatherman here to kind of explain their process of scientific opinion surveys. So that's the quick 30-second introduction there.
Should this be really quick here to?
Oh, no, take your time.
Yeah, give us your name and address and then do it.
All right, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to talk about scientific telephone surveys. My company used to be Decision Resources. We've been doing this. It's been in business since 1983. 2013, I became a partner, and we switched over to the Morris Leatherman Company. Primarily, we work with local units of government, primarily cities, primarily school districts. With cities, it's primarily looking at quality of life surveys. Most cities will check in with their residents over some sort of set time frame. Some cities do it every year. Some cities do it every 6 years. A lot of it depends on the growth in the city. When you look at residents, especially the group of less than 5-year residents, that gets to be 20%, that means in 5 years you have 1/5 of your population has turned over, and that could obviously impact what a community feels and what they think about city government. What we're talking about, some of the specific topics we discussed, and I think this came up, the discussion on a potential survey, especially looking at potentially some sort of referendum for park facilities. And we just worked with Apple Valley helping pass, I think theirs was about $68 million park bond referendum last year. And that survey process, they did 2 surveys. The first one was to establish the guardrails. Instead of just guessing what the community would support, you do a survey to see what the community would support, how much they would support, and then they tailored a plan with the committee that they had to do a recommendation to council. Once they had the plan, then we went out and tested the specific plan to see if it would have the chance to pass. And it was ultimately successful last November. The process we use is a telephone survey. It's the only way to get a statistically valid sample. You can do an internet survey, you can do a mail-out survey. On an internet survey, you have to keep in mind that 5 to 10% of people don't have access to the internet. That's a very specific demographic, over the age of 65, so you've biased your sample that way. On a mail-out survey, I always make the joke, my 23-year-old son has no idea where the mailbox is, much more is he going to go take a survey out of the mailbox, fill it out, put a stamp, and mail it back. So you have that bias inherently. Beyond that, who you hear from typically is your core opponents, those that are against everything. You might hear from the boosters, and then you have 70 to 80% of people that are just living their lives. Everything's fine. They don't feel the need to weigh in, and so they don't respond. So the typical response rate is 20-25%. What we do with the telephone survey, first off, everybody wonders about cell phones. We've been surveying cell phones since 2007. It just is necessary. In the metro area right now, it's approximately cell phone only households are about 60%. There's still about 10% landline only. They exist, and then the remainder have both landline and cell phone. So just generate a random sample off of that. And because people care about their community they live in, on a school district or a city survey, the non-response rate will keep under 10%. Now, the survey might be, it depends. If it's a targeted survey, just looking at referendum questions, it might be 40, 50 questions. If it's a long quality of life survey where the city wants to understand how people feel about city services, how they feel about taxes, how they feel about park and rec, how they feel about communication, how they feel about development, it can get to 150, 160 questions. And so regardless, because everybody's busy in life, and if you get a phone call, most people don't answer the phone to start with, so we leave a message, introduce ourselves, and we've worked with the city in order to indicate that you'll be conducting a survey, and then we call back. And about 60% of the calls are completed via appointment. So it's when it's convenient for the person to take the survey, not when it's convenient for us to give the survey. And that's the key difference for, quite frankly, a lot of the bad polling you see out there. What they do is call over the course of 2 nights, whoever answers the phone, that's the survey. And then they reweight on demographics. We don't do any reweighting. I'll have an expectation for my phoners. How many households with seniors in Dayton? How many households with children? How many homeowners versus renters? And we manage the sample because I don't want to reweight it. Because those companies that do it in 2 nights, you'll have 70% women, because men don't answer the phone, and then you'll also have about 60% over the age of 55-year-olds. So you've inherently biased the sample against those with an active lifestyle. So that's the typical process. That's why we do what we do. It's also why we've been so successful in helping cities and school districts help pass funding requests, because it's a comprehensive look. And I do think it's always best practice. 20 years ago, typically if a city was looking at a community center, they'd go through all the plans or a park bond. They'd come up with, here's the plan, go test it. What we kept finding over and over again is you had kind of an insider baseball look with the committees. So they thought they know what's needed, okay? But that might not necessarily be what the community would support. And it started to become very difficult for me to come in with these groups, and they've been working 2-3 months on the project and say, all your work doesn't have a snowball's chance of passing. And so that's why we kind of established and thought about, how about we set the guardrails for what's possible and operate within that as communities try to develop a plan. So I think with that, I've kind of thrown a lot of information at you. I'd be happy to answer some questions.
So I'm curious, since most people don't have landlines anymore, how you're able to target specific residences with cell phones. It's developed. It used to be in 2007, I would purchase lists from the cell phone company. I just had to sign a waiver saying that I'd have to take my child if I was selling anything. It was only for research purposes, because that's the loophole. Politicians need polls. And so that's why the do not call list doesn't apply. Now there are tremendous databases out there. So I have access to a database with every single resident, their voting history, but most importantly, it has their landline or their cell phone in it. And then for demographic data, are you using the census for that
Yes,
information?
looking at updated census, because now the census is already 4 years old. But the census does an American Community Survey within it every year to try to keep it as fresh as possible, which is important for a growing community. I think they included the City of Carver survey that we just completed. A lot of similarities with the growth rates in the communities. Carver's census doesn't look anything 4 years later like it does now. And similarly, that's why it's important to have that updated census information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have anything?
I looked through the Carver survey that they proposed. I thought the questions in there were good. I think they give us, if we can get good answers and good data on them, I think it gives us a good direction of kind of what we should or could do and helps better direct us. I think we all have our own opinions, but I think at the end of the day, all of us up here are trying to do what's best for the community as a whole. And so I think having that extra input is helpful for me. So I see a benefit in doing a survey like this. So I'd be in favor of whatever the next steps look like from that perspective. What do you think?
I would throw the caveat on, because I guarantee you, I always joke, I would have been retired 5 years ago if I had a nickel for every elected official that said the survey doesn't indicate what they hear. I guarantee you it won't.
Yeah.
In that sense, you hear from the 10%. There's a vast majority of people, and and I will say one other thing for our polling. In Minnesotan, we don't give them a middle option. There is no average.
There's no 3 and 5?
There's not out of 5. You don't give them a 3. You don't, out of 9, you don't give them a 5. We do scales of, if it's a referendum question, it strongly support, opposed, strongly opposed. If it's a rating, it's excellent, good, only fair, because in focus groups we determine you add only, it's slightly negative, it's a pejorative, and then poor. Because Minnesotans just huddle right into the average as quick as possible. And, we truly believe nobody feels that way. They might be a little bit positive and a little bit negative. So we do that in our survey.
And I noticed that in the Carver.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed there was no middle ground.
Yeah,
so.
no middle ground.
What was your response in the Carver?
The response rate?
Yeah,
I think it was less than 6% refusal rate.
6% refused, so 94%.
94%.
That's better.
94%. 94%. Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So you got 6%.
Yeah, 6%. Yeah.
Wow. But
So
you're not
you
reaching out to
didn't
every
call back
resident
or
in
something.
Carver.
I
You're
got it
reaching
now.
out to a statistic subset of residents that fulfills a greater whole, correct?
It is a random sample. I will just generate based on the count, have the computer run out 400 numbers for me. No, it's just completely random 100%.
Because that's one thing I noticed when, I know you guys did Champlin's, and Champlin in their update, their city update, they had posted, they had done it, some of the results, and they had said they had 400 people reply, and I was like, well, 425,000, that was a low response rate, but if you only reached out to 500, whatever it is.
Right, well, with a statistically valid survey, a 400 sample is plus or minus 5%, regardless if we do it in Dayton, Champlin, Hennepin County, or the state of Minnesota. It doesn't matter. It's the size of the sample, not the percent of the universe. It's my business partner was my stats professor, so he could come and give you, I sat for 14 weeks with it, in that sense. So, and that's why, and it becomes a cost benefit. And it sounds odd for a vendor to say, but my costs are driven by how many questions and how many people. To go to a plus or minus 4% instead of 5%, we have to talk to 625. Well, that increases the cost by 50%. Sounds odd, but I can't justify to a client to say there are instances where it's needed. But for the most part, for this sort of survey, the margin of error plus or minus 5% is the cost-effective measure.
I would add, if we do this, we should probably do more than I don't know if we've ever done a quality of life survey in the city, but some of the questions that were in there that weren't related to these things were also, I think, very good for us to know for feedback. So I don't know if everyone read all the questions.
These are just, like I said, these are just quick questions.
Yeah, I know. But as I read the Carver survey, there were a lot of things in there that I was like, oh, that'd be good to know too. So.
Well, I think you're right, there's probably additional opportunity. I think a lot of this was driven out of the ideas we had for potential referendum questions, and we were respectfully kind of shot down by our city attorney on a lot of this, so we're looking for another way to get those answers.
It was dry. You can't do it.
Here's where I am on this deal, and this is just me. I mean, No offense either, Amy. I mean, what created this problem or this issue is the fact that we didn't get, in my opinion, we got 3 or 4 different answers instead of just one. Here, do this. And it all comes down to a simple fact. Do the residents of Dayton support a $20 million expenditure? It's going to cost you this much money for 20 years. I personally would put this on a self-addressed stamped envelope and mail it out to the 3,500 homes in the city. Whatever I get back, I get back. That's my answer. And personally, I'd be okay with that.
So you'd be okay, based on the expert's opinion, to bias against young folks in the community? That's what he said, mailers bias against young folks.
I don't care about any of that. To me, that's better than spending $18,000 for whatever you come up with. That's my personal deal. That's where I am on this. I mean, I'm not into doing a quality of life. I mean, obviously that they're happy with living here, they're here. I mean, you're never going to pacify everybody on every issue. That's just the way it's going to be.
But our job isn't to pacify everyone. I mean, we're here to help the majority of the citizens in the city, correct?
Well, yeah, you're going to ask them, are you willing to support this for this much money? That's the question you're going to ask.
But when you read the questions, they weren't really worded like that, Scott. Did you? I mean, in the
that's where we're going. That's why we have this particular conversation. It all comes down to how much money somebody is going to support for what you're getting.
I see where you're coming from. I just feel like we need a way to know, because some of these things would become bonding questions, which would go to the voters,
yep.
Right? So, to me, it seems a better approach for us to refine what the community actually wants before we put it on a ballot, and not say, well, we cooked up a $50 million idea, and actually the residents are thinking more like 5, and so it gets voted down, and then we've wasted a bunch of time getting ready to do that, and only for it to fail, and we could have found that out in advance. It wasn't going to fly. So I think it helps us refine what we're asking for based on, what we think people would approve. So different thought on it.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're at.
So when it's a fairly straightforward question like that, or I shouldn't say fairly straightforward, but this is not, those are not 30-minute topics. Would you merge those in with this quality of life thing, or how does this work?
Oh, absolutely. It could be merged in. Like I said, I mean, survey lengths can go from 40 questions. The longest, back in the day, Richfield did 250 questions.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that.
Yeah, but it's not 250 questions about a sports complex. You're wasting somebody's
Mr.
time.
Leatherman, would you comment about the time frame it takes for 40 questions versus 120 questions? Because I know some of the questions that we had talked about when we discussed it, staff with yourself, is you're not going to ask a question like, well, you're going to ask subsequent questions, which are going to count as 2. For example, would you support a $40 million sports complex? Okay, yes. Right. Okay, would you support a $45 million complex? Okay, yes. Would you support a 50? That's 3 questions versus one question.
I mean, I would say, like the Carver example, that's approximately 100 questions. That took less than 15 minutes. When you look at it, you have to keep in mind that not everybody's going to answer all the questions. It's going to depend if there's a section, have you had contact with City Hall? You say, no, I'm not going to ask you about your customer service experience. So it's not necessarily, very few people get asked every single question. You really have to you win the jackpot as you're going through and answer every one, right, to get into the branches in that sense. As far as these sorts of things, absolutely they can fit in because these are policies. And then on top of the quality of life aspect. The one thing I always tell clients is there are thousands of interesting questions. Are they actionable? Can you do something with the information? And don't ask questions you don't want answers for. You know, a few times, you know, cities have been put in a box by the survey response that they got, because they asked a question, the community went one way, and then they still went ahead and did it, and then the community saying, well, you asked us for our opinion, 70% of people said no, and then oftentimes you have turnover at the next election when that happens. So, you know, it's just a caveat out there as you're asking the public for their opinion.
And people will answer 100 questions?
Yeah. They won't ask.
I mean, my first question, if you're asking me 100 questions, is how much am I getting paid for this?
Well, that's why you don't do focus groups anymore, because that was to get people to do focus groups is impossible now. But no, when you make it convenient, people care. Can I ask 100 questions about the state legislature or the federal government? No, no. But for their city and their school district, they care. They can have an impact, and especially on a funding request, they're going to let you know, yes or no, on where they're at. You know, the key is most cities have 10% that support everything, 10 to 15% that oppose everything, and the key is how the middle wash out. That's the critical piece to understand, because in an election, everybody has the opportunity to vote.
Peter, in the thing of, you know, process of where your other client cities have gone and where we're sitting at right now. So, you know, think of Carver as an example. There's a number of questions about Southwest Transit and a ride-share program. You know, when you were talking with Carver early on in the process, I mean, what was it that Carver was trying to focus on? Like, was it 10 different subjects, or was it just transit?
The first survey they did in 2020 was they wanted, because of all the growth, to understand where all the new residents were at. The new residents weren't represented. The council had all lived in the city for 10 years or more, and they wanted to make sure that they were keeping in touch with those new residents, because those new residents come with different expectations. You know, the settlers versus the newbies in that sense. So it was general. It had some specific policy questions. This time around in Carver, they kept kind of the core, the quality of life, so you can look, because that's the other thing. If you do surveys over time, you can see how opinions vary. And so they can look and see, okay, how do people feel about, I mean, there's a huge shift in the state of Minnesota on property taxes. Property tax hostility exploded last year. So now they have the comparison to where they were in 20 to 2024, and they can see how that impact, the property tax hostility, has impacted not only how people feel about city services, but the general value of the services they're getting. But then on this one, they switched some of the topics out, and we included, they had the 25 mile per hour speed limit question in there. The questions, like you mentioned, on Southwest Transit. Theirs was more, they're looking kind of more global, not specific for park bond, but investment of city funding for street repair, those sorts of things.
So this is a new business. Do we need to vote on something, or is this
Yeah,
just
so what would be the next steps for us to do? Approve this, look at it. Do you want us to provide you questions, topics?
If you approve the survey, then I start working with staff on the draft. More than happy, then I always make sure that the staff is getting information from the council on topics that you would like to see explored. And then typically we go back and forth on a revised draft. And then at some point, the council kind of weighs in on the draft overall. Are we missing things? Things that shouldn't be on there, those sorts of things. It's kind of the typical process. It typically takes, the drafting, I make a joke, it could take 48 days or 48 hours. Typically, it's about 4 weeks.
When do you start charging? When you start working on the draft, or when you start making phone calls? When do we sign the contract with you?
Yeah, I just
It gets paid right when you sign the contract.
I just do first half when we have a survey finalized, because I need to know the number of questions. So there's no charge until the survey is approved, and then the second half is due after I come out and present with the final.
So you need a motion?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll motion that we move forward with creating a draft survey to send out to residents to make sure that we're inclusive of all people.
I will second that.
Can you restate that?
Sure. I'll move that we move forward with creating a draft of questions with the Morris Leatherman Company survey.
Okay. I heard something different, but okay. And
I'll
you-
still manage my second on that.
Okay. Any more discussion?
In terms of pricing, when do we know that? Once the size of the survey is determined, or the number of calls?
What's the
or-
number of questions? It would, the price, I think the price in there is for 60 questions, roughly. And like the city manager mentioned, it might be 70. If you say, I want to look at all city services, if my phoners go through a list of ask, how do you rate police, fire, street repair and maintenance? Okay, that takes 5 seconds. If I'm asking a park bond referendum question that has an introductory paragraph and then one question, that counts. So it's somewhere between 60 to 80 questions when I count it up. Is that 18,000? If you go longer, if you want to have a more expansive quality of life survey, look at communications, those sorts of things. But I can ballpark it when I do the initial draft, so you know what you're looking at. So if you want to make cuts from that or additions, you'll have an idea.
And what ultimately is the deliverable? I mean, are we getting the raw data that you collected, or
no,
something that is undergone some analysis?
Yeah. Once the surveys are completed, we coded data enter them into our system, and then you'll get the survey like you saw the Carver survey with all the percents. I'll do a PowerPoint, and then I come out and present. And I talk about, it's interesting to know 50% feel this way, but with the database that I have, I can tell you what it means in comparison to the metro area, to exurban communities like yourself, and put it into context. And then we write a final report where we look at statistically. The demographics section, that's for two purposes. Not only to validate the sample against the census, but then also that we can look at differences. How do households with seniors feel versus households with children? How do homeowners feel versus renters? So then we'll do that in a write-up report for you also.
So these back-end questions were the validation. So one is what's your age? I'm guessing
Right.
you already know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you think you already know that?
I
get it.
on that one, we just ask them to make sure that we do.
Yeah.
That we know. The critical piece on that one, and I don't think Carver asked a question on the financially stressed situation of the household. Though that factor is the number one issue with referendums that failed last year for school districts, is the macroeconomic situation of households. It's as bad as it's been since the recession of 2008, 2009.
Yep. Okay, any more discussion?
I have a question. So I do believe that we need more direction as far as the topics go.
I'll get that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll reach out to council.
What we're kind of approving is the process, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep. You guys are approving the process for us to start working with Mr. Leatherman and the processing and the
Well,
questions.
eventually-
I'll reach out for topics, like I do the council. You guys send me them back. I'll give them to Mr. Leatherman. He'll provide some fault questions and generate what he does, because he provides some non-biased questions that aren't geared towards one or the other, and then provide it back to me.
You hired me to write neutrally worded questions.
Correct.
Too. I always joke, I can write a question to elicit whatever answer you want.
certainly can.
Doesn't do anybody any good.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Agreed.
Any more discussion? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Passes 4-1. Okay, thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, where did we get to? Item P. Discussion of fees for Operation Zero event at Magnus Veterans Foundation.
Me too.
So we had the Operation Zero reach out that they are hosting an event at the Magnus Veterans Foundation, They're a nonprofit trying to raise money. It's towards 0 deaths for veteran suicide. And they had just asked if fees could be waived as they're nonprofit, and so is the Veterans Foundation.
So a couple years ago, maybe like 5, we had talked about fees and nonprofits. We clearly didn't come up with a policy, right? Because otherwise we could apply that here.
So we do have reduced fees for like activity center rentals. I guess we don't, I mean, that would have been approved like in the fee schedule.
Yeah.
We've not had anything in place for anything else.
And this is specifically for the large event fee?
Yeah, so.
Large event,
Yeah.
fireworks, permit, and then police services.
Yeah, so they like to have all three, so they'd like to have large assembly permits, which I know we've done in the past.
Mhm.
And we don't have a policy for it, but we've
We
set
should have a policy,
basically a precedent that we've allowed large assemblies to be waived for nonprofits. However, we have never had a nonprofit ask us for a fireworks permit to be waived and/or all police services to be waived as well, so.
Well, I think we did a few years back, maybe say nonprofit, or for some, I don't even think it was necessarily a nonprofit to pull, you might remember this, but it was for basically any public event. Sure. I believe we just said you get our services.
I think it was nonprofits specific.
So, well, okay.
Because most nonprofits were the ones running the public events.
So this one has never operated in the city of Dayton, so we just want to make sure that we're on the same page looking for
What do you
direction.
do with those things with bunt?
Bunts, we don't charge for that, right?
We do not, no. But they don't have a
So-
fireworks permit either.
No, I know that, but I mean.
No, I mean for
They
police.
pull
They pull
a
out a large-
large assembly.
Yep.
Yep.
And they pay for the permit.
And do they pay
They
for it?
do. Yep, it got reduced to $60, I believe.
$60,
Did Hunter end up our community service officer, did he end up doing some traffic for the Bunts production at 1.2, like a large weekend that they had or something?
Yeah, we have traffic control there every night.
So the first 2 years, they had paid for the service,
Yeah.
and then because of the Heritage Day, after that discussion, it was decided that they would no longer have to pay
Right.
for the
Right.
police services.
Yeah, that's what I had, and that's what I remember is.
So it really kind of landed at our 2 existing. I think at the time it was discussed that it didn't change the fee schedule and we would continue with the fee because you don't know what organizations are going to come in with
Yeah.
what event.
You're talking about the large, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So it was to ask, at the time we had something come up. So
Yeah.
we could have 5 nonprofit organizations come in and want to do 5 different events. I don't know if we have the capacity to approve all of them.
You mean if they're coinciding?
On the same day, weekend?
It's the ability
Sure.
to get staff to get overtime or want to work overtime.
No, I get all
As
that.
If they want, if we say, for example,
So if we
we
just
provide a
open the
policy.
gates.
Yeah, provide a
Any
policy.
nonprofit can come in here anytime and apply for a large assembly and we're just going to provide services. I don't know that we realistically can offer that.
Provide that, which is why it's been a one-off basis, or ones that have already been existing that do it every single year annually.
Yeah, it just seems odd to have to do it individually, but
And we
you're-
can do
you're
a-
just saying because you never know who's going to show up.
Correct.
Yeah, if word gets out, we could have 100, all of a sudden nonprofits want to rent land and do something over the weekend.
Yeah,
And then that
that's
becomes,
Stephen's
every
point.
weekend we're
No,
doing it.
I'm just kidding.
Right?
So again, this one's a new one that has not been in Dayton before, so we figured we'd bring it to council to get their direction. from council.
Well,
Not something they won't do in the future, just.
Right. They're joining.
Where are they at in getting a event center permit?
We're working with them currently to bring it in, and
Talking
yeah, we're
Yeah.
working with them to get it.
Because if they had that, they wouldn't need the large assembly permit.
Correct.
Which means they would, by de facto, not need to pay the $60.
Correct.
No, they pay a lot more than that.
But it's a one-time fee,
It's a
right?
one-time, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, so then they would have just came before asking to waive for the firework permit and the,
well, what's the
What's the
fireworks
firework
permit?
permit about?
I think it's $100.
Does that include firefighter time to be there or no?
Mayor's members of the council,
Yes.
it's $100 for the permit, but that does not include staff time. So I do need to have staff there in order to, like we did for the Friday night event
Yep.
that we had last year.
So they would look for fire services as well to be waived as well. Or fees for that.
So between the fire and the police, what's the cost? Time, labor? Because this is money the city is essentially donating. One, how we look at one or the other, we start doing this for nonprofits.
Yeah.
It's money that we are donating in lieu of cash. We are donating money to them in the form of services.
I haven't seen this large assembly permit yet, so I don't know how many hours
That's what I
we're
was wondering.
required to be there, but if it's an 8-hour event that we have to have 2 cops there and maybe a CSO for traffic.
I'm doing the quick math here on.
I think every couple of years we redo this.
Probably talking $1,000, $1,500 easy overall.
$2,500 in fees.
Is that just for police?
Yep, that's just for
And
police.
then you add your hour 2 for 3, 4 firefighters?
Yeah, I would say based on the area that they want to launch the fireworks, we're probably talking 4 to 6 staff
Mhm.
for 2 hours in that capacity. So I'll say $250, just round numbers, I guess.
So-
And then the $100 on top of that for the permit.
Mr. Mayor.
It's like
$3,000.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that, as Councilmember Trost mentioned, this is a donation
Yeah.
of city services, and there's some fairly strict rules around public purpose expenditures, even when it's in-kind donations. And so I just would want to caution about opening the floodgates on something like this. I'd be happy to provide more information about what can and can't qualify as public purpose and supporting community events and that sort of thing.
So what differentiates this? So let's say Magnus has an event and they request some police officers versus some event happening at another resident. I mean, we end up providing police services there also. I mean, to me,
You're talking about funds? Is that what you say? At
I'm
another resident?
talking about any other resident.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
they can't
to
shoot
me-
out fireworks.
Huh? No,
Any
I
other
guess what
resident.
I'm getting at is to me, Magnus is, they're requesting to have the city help them, right? And a resident may request the police to come over and talk to about X. I guess what I'm wondering is you seem to think that there's kind of a special funding mechanism or something unique about how we would donate that time. We're always donating time to residents.
That's correct. But in situations like this where you're waiving fees and you're providing staff for events and, putting the city's employees at risk and all that sort of thing, the state auditor has, for lack of a better word, dinged some cities for improper use of public funds.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying on that, too.
So I just am expressing caution.
That's where they would hire some of their local security firm or something like that to run
Right.
traffic of some sort, like they'd contract that themselves.
Right,
Versus,
or they would pay, the police officers hourly rate.
Sure.
Or, just those sorts of things where you're not providing it free of charge.
Yeah, the
Because
problem
it's
is
not a
two
city
things.
activity.
Correct.
Right, I get that. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah, well, that kind of makes the point that we should develop a policy on how
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
dealing
I don't
with this,
disagree.
so
I
that we're
mean,
consistent and not
but if you
going-
do it for one, you gotta do it for, then Bunce's all of a sudden gotta pay for police time. I mean,
I
if you
know.
do it for one, you gotta do it for
Right.
everybody.
Well, I think we need
It's-
to know that that's wrong before we would change our
Yeah.
approach on that, but it doesn't seem like it is.
Just
I mean,
be
it's
clear,
no
I'm not
different than even Riverfest for that matter.
I'm not
It's the
against
same
it.
thing.
I was just asking the question and making it clear what we're actually
Yep.
donating.
Yep.
So I just want it to be clear.
And-
Someone takes out of context what I said.
And when this came up the last time, same issues, we went through the money, and I think it was specifically for Bunce, how many hours, blah, blah, blah. The issue is that if we were to charge for these things, the only group that could do public events would be the city, because the city doesn't pay for police, they're already there. This would kill events.
That's
And I think that's the issue. You know, a lot of these events are very low profit. I mean, this thing, I don't know what they make off of it, but,
I believe in the
And a lot of these add value, I would say also add value to the community. You look
Yes.
at Bunce is bringing arts to a rural community.
Yeah.
This is doing a lot of great work for a lot of great people as well. So I'm not arguing.
Yeah, you're
I
asking
think
the
we're on the
question.
same page. I'm just
Yep.
asking the question.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And like I said, it comes up periodically, and,
I'm also worried too that we're consistent. That's my other piece, is we either need to have a policy in place of how we approach this to make sure it's okay legally, but also that we're doing it consistently and we aren't then just picking and choosing our favorite charities up here that are doing work in the community that then we want to be part of. That makes it so there's no bias in where it's given.
Yeah.
Is there a way to save the idea of getting 5 or 10 or 20 of these all of a sudden popping up by saying that whoever's putting on this event has to be a Dayton community facility?
We do approve the permits, right? The large.
The council approves the large assembly
Right,
permits.
and we can deny them arbitrarily.
You can't deny anything arbitrarily,
Well-
or I would advise you against doing that. But it's in your discretion to approve or deny permit applications based on the factors that are there in the application.
And if we look at it and say, geez, there's 2 other big events here, then we would have some discretion. And it would be a first come, first served kind of a thing.
It could be,
Okay.
yes. I mean, and it's not, I don't mean to tell you, don't do it or go ahead and do it. I'm just offering the caution about, you know, the state auditor looking at your expenditures on things like this. There are certain parameters where it's perfectly fine for a
Yeah.
city to contribute to community events and things like that. You would just want to make sure, as Councilmember Trost mentioned, that it's applied equally, and there are certain factors that come into play as to public benefit and things like that when you talk about public purpose expenditures.
I think, and the other thing that always comes up, and it hasn't so far, but is the state statute on that.
Correct.
Which is, once again, clear as mud.
Well, as it's been interpreted by the courts, you know, since
Which
the
is why,
60s.
Isn't Champlin, isn't it Shed Fest theirs?
That's theirs,
Right,
yeah,
the
on
city
the
does
property,
that.
on their, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I guess for what it's worth, I would risk, I guess to say, approving this time, but I think it deserves its deeper discussion as far as like what our policy would look like moving forward with this. If we put more time on this in the future state.
Well, yeah, and even, I don't know. It seems like as part of this, we do need to have a policy.
City staff can look at it and work with Amy
Yeah,
to draft up a policy and bring it to the council.
Draft a memo.
And I don't know
Let
how
us know.
we, protect against, because there could be outside entities coming in to do a legitimate large event. I don't know what that example would be, but I can see that. And again, to me, it's.
Yeah, so Operation Zero is not a Magnus Veterans
That's what I was
Foundation
gonna
event.
say. This is an exact example
This is
of
an
that.
exact example of that. That Operation Zero is a separate nonprofit that is using Magnus Veterans
Okay.
Foundation's facility because they have a large
Space.
piece of land that they're able to do.
And they're probably told
Paid
the
for.
city pays for all this stuff, so you can save some money, but
Potentially.
No, they did
Potentially.
call and ask what
Sorry.
the fees were, and they
Okay.
asked if there was any
Okay.
way for them to be waived, and I said I didn't have authority, I would have to ask council.
Again, to me, it's with the lack of large events in this city, it seems like we should be really helping those groups out. But
Yeah, I think I think we need a policy. I don't think we should be, I'm not worried about 25 events coming in and overwhelming us. We haven't had 25 in 25 years. But, I mean, its potential is there, and I think we have that discretion if this is the 4th one on the table for that weekend. I think we should, or at least end in our policy, say that we have limited resources and we will only approve up to, Paul's got 9 guys, okay? You can't have all of them over at the event, whatever it is, or at the 4 events. I
They're
think
not
we
all
need
on
to
duty
have
on
that
Friday
latitude to use, that we don't have the resources to support something even if it is legitimate, just because of the number that are occurring. I think that's a problem we'd like to have, but it's not the problem we have today.
That's true. Well, do we give some guidance for the policy and then deal with this thing?
When is the event?
August 10th.
You can table it, wait, you can bring a policy along with this one. You can accept it and prove it as it states with all three of them, and then come back for the policy. You can deny it and say we don't have a policy, come back with a policy. You can do any one of
I
the
think we
above
should
combined.
table it. And the reason being, it seems like there should be not necessarily rocket science to come up with a policy for these things.
Shouldn't be too bad, no? We'll put our heads
We'll
together.
see that in 6 months. 6 months?
I'm okay with that.
Wait,
I'm just kidding.
you're okay with tabling it? Okay, I'm okay with tabling it too. The question I have for Amy, when we look at developing the policy, does it make sense to put to give us an out to deny things? To put in there, not just a resource, but a annual financial cap that we're willing to put, are we allowed to do that? To say, the city will do this until X amount of time is X amount of time resources donated? Because what I don't want to have happen is a bunch of them will come in the future. I'm trying to future-proof this, so 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And maybe every year we get to allot what that dollar amount is as part of our budget. I don't know, but I think it should be budgeted for. So if we're going to do this, we should have a number in our head anyways that we should be looking at. And B, when the funds run out, the funds run out. So that's why I'm asking the question. Because I don't want us to get over budget. But I mean, last year we dickered over $20,000 in the budget. We all know we did. These can add up. It only takes less than 10 of these in a given year to do it. We know of 2 that are for sure going to happen, but this organization runs multiple of them a year, or has in the past. So, I don't know, I think we should put a cap on it, and then we can properly budget for it as well. That if we're allowed to do that legally, that would be my other piece to think
Well,
about.
I'm wondering if it could be kind of partitioned out in the activity fund.
Sure, I don't know.
Somehow.
But something to think about when we're writing the. I think
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll motion that since we have the time, that we table this. How long, Amy, do you think or Amy and staff think we'll need to get a policy in front of the council?
I could have a draft ready next week.
As I mean, so
Yeah.
let's
Like
go
table
with
one meeting.
There's some back and forth
Let's shoot for
between
the,
me and staff.
either, we can shoot for the 11th, depending on, I don't know, Amy's not gonna be at the 11th meeting, so we can do the 25th meeting.
That's
Amy
fine.
will be at that one, and I think
Fine.
that's a plus.
You know what, but if you guys come up with something that's,
Basic.
half a paragraph,
Yeah.
we're not gonna need.
I think
Correct.
the 11th is fine, personally.
Yeah, we don't need 10
it'll be-
pages on
So
it.
I'll motion that we table this until the next meeting.
Okay.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Tabling carries 5-0. And we are on to, wow, we're half hour late, on to item Q.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's working.
Where am I just clicking on this?
Click arrows, whatever you want to do.
Oh, down here.
It shouldn't
Never
take
mind.
too long. We
It's
already
there.
discussed this
Sorry.
for-
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The action before you is a request for me as the fire chief to designate the PID 31-20-2213-0010 as land used for future fire station and training facility. Is there another slide? Or no?
Click the button.
Sorry, okay. Overview of the site. This geographic location is at the corner of Dayton Parkway and County Road 81. This is currently designated as tax forfeiture property by Hennepin County. Originally purposed for, I believe, for a park and ride. Currently, the property is currently vacant, obviously. And we're looking for council to give us direction on if you believe that this would be a good location for Fire Station 3 and future training facility for the fire department. So we're looking for direction for Dayton staff to fulfill paperwork to Hennepin County to repurpose land to utilize for the fire station and training facility.
basically approve or deny that request.
How many usable acres are there? Was it
About
six?
6.5.
I think there's about six and a half.
6.5, something like that. Question pertaining to the EDA meeting coming up in June. I believe this topic is on there for EDA to put this property on the market.
Yeah, so mayor, members of council, the EDA will be coming before you, depending on what happens with this item, which is why it's in
Right.
sequential order, to be able to figure out if they'd like to be able to take it under their control and process the land. So again, the reason why it's in sequential order is because we need clear direction from council of what you'd like to do with it. The direction from staff is we need that direction, so we need to approve it as a future fire station and training facility. If that's not the case, then we need to deny this request. And then at the next meeting, there will be then, if it's denied, the EDA will come in front of you, which was discussed at the last EDA meeting. And the EDA board chair will be here to discuss what their proposal is for the piece of property. So,
Okay.
which is why, again, it's in sequential order, because staff needs clear direction of what to do with this property. This has been discussed since I became city administrator, that it's been sitting there, and there's been nothing going on at the property. It's just vacant land, and I don't believe anyone on this council has said that they'd like to keep it as a park and ride, but that is also an option if that's what the council would like to do.
God, no.
And this is kitty corner from where we just approved the truck stop, correct?
This
Yeah.
is correct. Yep. Acres on that property that are usable currently is 6.5. It might be a little less with buffers and whatever else, but.
Okay, discussion?
More discussion?
Motion?
Otherwise, I'm gonna get after it.
So I will say, I know that in the, go ahead, you were saying.
Oh, well, just a couple of quick comments. I mean, I've said this at a couple of the work sessions. I don't love that location for this use. That doesn't mean I'm against us moving much more quickly than we have been to find a location for the fire station and potential training facility. But I also want to make sure that these are two separate questions. If we were to say no to this use for that property, I think we still have to have the discussion about is the EDA the right answer? for what to
Totally
do?
separate, which is why it's on in the same meeting.
Okay, that's correct. That's just the point I want to make. It's two different questions to me.
There's, three different questions. You can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever you want to do. But that's why they're two separate questions on two separate nights, not to confuse them together so that we have clear direction. Thank you very much.
I think part of the problem is, if we were to, what I would consider to have exhausted all answers, I might be okay with this. But I don't think we've done that. Sure. And that's why I'm hesitant to say, no, we shouldn't use this. But if we're pressed to make it a decision, I think today I'd be no, because, for reasons we've stated kind of over and over again.
What additional information do you think is that you're missing? I'm just curious.
Other property options.
So we heard from the gentleman today, this area is not good for restaurants. It's going to pull in more warehouses and like things given the area. That's why I asked him the question. We had an expert sitting here today, so I figured I'd ask him the question.
Yep.
So I guess we went down this route with the truck stop here 4 years later. So
we did, but
I don't disagree. I think I'd love to see a restaurant or something there, something that would draw people in, that may even be additive to the truck stop. I think there's options there. I just don't know if we're going to see that come to fruition in anywhere near a timely manner. And my other concern is we've known we needed land since 2019.
Yep.
We sit here in 2024, half a decade later, we still don't have a different property, and the ones that we have tried to purchase have, my understanding is, really jacked up the price once the city was involved, and we don't even have the money set aside, I would say, these days to cover the cost of the land we're going to have to buy in order to put this number 3 on.
We don't know that, though.
You think we're going to get land for $500,000?
Yep.
Do you know somebody, Scott? I don't think we're going to get land.
We haven't tried.
I don't think
we have not put put 10 minutes worth of effort into this whole process.
So my opinion is, I struggle to believe that for $500,000, we're gonna find land, which is what we have set aside now, we're gonna find land in this area that can provide what we need, even if we don't do the training facility, just the firehouse. And that's where I struggle, is not that I think that, oh, this is the best place for this, because I think there's probably other places that are better. But when I look at the financial economics of it, I have a hard time believing that we're going to have the money to buy the land, I'm going to say this year, to be able to have land set aside to do it, where we have an opportunity now to have the land that we need for this at $300 cost. What's it cost?
I think it's the application.
Less than $1,000, right? And so I'm taking more of a financial look at this when I look at this versus the alternative. So that's my 2 cents.
Here's a financial look at this, and for me, it's extremely black and white. This has and we all know what I'm not going to say what the appraisal value is because I don't want numbers publicly. We all know what that value is, supposedly. Nobody has made the call to see if that number can be changed. Just say that we're able to buy it for less than that, or EDA is. And we already know there's a parcel out there in the $1 million area, is what they're supposedly asking. I don't know, I mean, that's what we were told tonight.
You're talking about flipping a profit on this property. That's what you're getting to?
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is, and Amy's here, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to hold the property for so long before we can flip it for a profit. We can't just buy it tomorrow and then flip it for a profit.
That's not true.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor, council members. You don't have to hold it for a specific amount of time before you can sell it for a profit. The obligation that the city would have if you were to acquire the parcel for fair market value would be that you would sell it for fair market value. And if that changes in the interim, once you acquire it from the county for fair market value, then fair market value is what, willing buyer, willing seller. There is some guidance from the Department of Revenue about flipping, that generally they don't, the Department of Revenue, frowns upon, a public entity acquiring a tax forfeited parcel and then just turning around and selling it for profit. But honestly, when it comes to the sale of the property, it's up to the county, whether they are willing to sell it to the city for the fair market value as they determine it. Mm-hmm. The statute specifically says that the county determines that fair market value. They can get an appraisal. They don't have to get an appraisal. They can, use their own internal staff in the assessing department to say we think it's worth X. But there's no hard and fast rule about you have to hold it for a specific amount of time before you could resell it.
Do we have the funds to straight out purchase the property?
Depends on what.
Depends on where you take it from.
Yeah, it depends on price and who's paying for it and what's
just
going on.
kind of a side question. So this property is sitting in the county hands, and let's say we buy it off of them for any price. They've just made a significant profit because they acquired it for whatever the tax lien was. Now, I know there's been a court case that's saying that they may have to return some of that money. I guess I'm not sure where the county's at now with their analysis of that decision, but it does seem to me kind of odd that they wouldn't want to negotiate a price which is, for public. If we were to use it for public use, the county's going to get nothing.
Nothing.
In fact, they will have a loss on it because of the lien. It seems odd to me they wouldn't want to negotiate something. And we just never attempted that, though.
Sure. I got an idea.
If we use it for public use, we're just
It's a $300 application.
redesignating the tax. We're not having to purchase it.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it costs us effectively zero other than the loss it's commercial property we just put a government building on. but, yeah, we don't, it doesn't cost us much. And the county gets nothing. So, I mean, I'm not gonna cry tears for the county, but they're making nothing on it.
Yeah.
And so it just seems to me that if there's negotiation, they have some incentive.
For what it's worth, I guess, if the temperature in the room is to not utilize this as a public infrastructure for the fire station or training facility, I guess I would like to put it in there that, you know, I want a purchase agreement on another piece of property before this one sells then, in order for the fire department to kind of lock something down, keep us moving forward in that direction. Otherwise, it's just, we'll just sell this property and I feel like we'll just retrospectively just kick the can down the road again. So I'd like to hold us a little bit accountable that, you know, in lieu of selling this, that we've found something else.
Well, how about this? How about if we just make the attempt to turn this to EDA and see if they can do something with it? Give them. I mean, there's no serious. We don't have to have fire station property in the next 3 months.
Yeah, so we're not talking about turning over the EDA today.
No. I mean,
but you keep saying that, so just so you know, that's not. We're talking about just the city, meaning the council buying it today.
Right.
Or
What we're
not
talking
doing
about
this.
is whether or not to put the fire station.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
And I agree, I think the other one warrants more discussion
Agree.
on what is the right answer if we're not putting a fire station on it.
Mayor,
I'm
members
going
of
to make a
council.
motion that we say no and deny this.
I'm going to second it. And again, I'm going to say that I want us to put
Change in 6
real
months or
effort
more.
into finding a location for that third fire station. I just don't like this one, and I've been consistent with that opinion.
Okay, we get a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, 3-2.
Thank you.
That was the same direction that you had about 4 months ago. 2 months ago.
Not necessarily. So that's why I wanted it in clear writing so that we were good versus discussion.
Okay.
So I think the issue still, though, is if we put forth, I mean, a significant amount of effort and we don't find anything, we may still look at this and say.
But yeah, that's why it's easy to get clear direction, and then we can move to the next thing, and then staff can keep moving on things. So.
Okay. Item R, approval for purchase of a fire ladder truck.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council.
Nope.
Whoops, wrong one.
Oh boy,
Now
hit
look
escape.
what I did.
Hit escape on the. There you go.
Yeah.
Escape's always
Let's try that
the
again.
same
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This evening you had an opportunity around 4:30, 4:45 to see a Delano's fire truck as an example of what the fire department would like to purchase. Today before you, their action item is to approve the purchase of a aerial ladder truck in the amount of $2,497,779 from McQueen Emergency. We had discussion as it relates to that earlier on the reason for the purchase as it relates to either improving our ISO rating. The one thing that I did mention earlier, I'll confirm here again today, is that the purchase of this piece of equipment, as we look to the future for Station 3 and its location and whatnot, this would fundamentally round out large significant purchases as it relates to apparatus and prepping for that station. The reason to bring before you today, originally in the CIP budget, I have $3.6 million for that purchase in 2028. This vehicle, if agreed upon to be purchased today, would be a contract with McQueen for about $1.1 million less than what's currently in the CIP. Roughly, we're seeing an increase of about $200,000 compounded annually. Every quarter, they're seeing about a 5%, 5 to 8% increase quarterly. So roughly $50,000 thereabouts over that period of time when we originally looked at purchasing that vehicle in 2028.
Do want to make sure Mayor, members of council, that we know that we're gonna, if this is approved, we will look to add the language that was mentioned during the work session, which is if we cancel this purchase, we get charged $0. We're not out anything from doing that process.
Yeah. This is not a quint, right?
It is not a quint, so I don't know, I can explain what that is, if,
Yeah.
out of curiosity. So a quint is combining a straight stick ladder with no bucket to an engine. So basically, if we have engine 21 that we have out here, we stick a straight stick ladder on the top of it. That is not, it will get us to elevated surfaces, if you will. However, from a safety perspective, for me, as far as also as affecting the rescue of residents, it doesn't have the bucket on the end. If
Yeah,
you
I'd
will.
want a bucket. Hanging on the end of a ladder.
You can't use Marty's bucket?
It's not NFPA approved in that.
I know he doesn't like to share, but
we're happy to use anything that Marty sends our way.
I mean, the difference in those two rigs was only like $300,000, so it's not that big a deal.
I was just kind of wondering why.
No, I mean,
It sounded like,
it's not.
at least what I've seen in this study, that they were recommending a quint. And that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, and I've built a quint in my career. When I was in Wilmer, I built a quint. We had a 75-foot stick ladder on top of that, straight stick ladder. It gave ability more or less than anything as an elevated master stream. But imagine even 75 feet in the air, sticking a firefighter up there, doing a leg lock and doing what they need to do. No, you're not interested.
I watched a guy cut the top of a tree off about
that
80
person's
feet,
gonna die.
and that tree was going like this. Not me.
Yeah, hence that's my recommendation of the full area.
Here's one concern that I have with this whole deal, and we're going to need this at some point. I don't disagree with that at all. My personal opinion is we are still about 10 years away from Station 3. That's my personal opinion.
Sure.
And with this vehicle, Zach did answer my question that we do have some place to put it because apparently it'll fit in this building.
Yep.
Oh,
I asked the same question earlier. Yes, it will fit in this
that was
building.
my
That's what I
question
got.
too.
Yep.
It will fit in. The other thing that I haven't
So
talked
you gotta hold the door up or something?
No,
Soup can?
we have the ability here. The thing that I didn't bring up, I'll bring up briefly, we can talk about another time, is utility 21 that we have in the station currently. That is not included in CIP. It's never been included in the CIP for replacement. So we're actually looking at taking that piece of equipment and combining it with engine 21 and not renewing, not getting another one of those. So the idea is that if we did have a Station 3, by that time, when it did come, we do have the ability to store it at either station. It would fit at either one of them.
Yeah, so Mayor, members of council, in the fire study, that utility 21 is noted as heavy rescue.
Yeah.
So if you saw heavy rescue listed in there, it said 1 now and it says 0 in the future.
Yep.
That is what
Oh,
Chief
that
is,
is why it's
that is what Chief is
Yep.
Trying referencing when he says that.
Consolidate vehicles, very similar to what we did with the tanker engine. Do the same thing here. We would take that equipment. It's actually preferred because when we respond to an extrication, we do need a water source. So right now, we're taking 2 vehicles and really only need 1.
So here's where I'm going with that whole deal is, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I guess, we need to be, I personally, if the Dayton residents support this whole thing, the ladder truck, the fire station, if they're willing, I mean, this ladder truck alone, for the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to cost every household $175 a year. And for the next 4 or 5 years. That's just what it's going to be. Then all of a sudden.
Wait a minute. So the math that Zach did for me last week, every $100,000 of tax costs the average homeowner about $2 a month. So you're talking 2 times 25, so it's
Take
$50
$2.5 million and figure out how much
I know
it
Zach
pays.
did the actual math though, based upon our actual taxes, not just residential, but residential, commercial, and industrial. So we're sharing good information. What Zach told me is every $100,000 is $2 a month to the average home. So that would mean 25 times 2 is $50. So if we had to,
how long are you stretching that out?
That's just built in the tax rate.
Yeah, so what, yeah,
How long are you
Councilor
paying that
Solonic
$2.5
is
million
taking the same kind of information, but $25 is equal to $100,000 per year. So if you want to do $500,000 per year, because we're going to do it for the next 5 years, which is what you're mentioning, 25 times 5 is 125, times by 5 is, that would be $125 per
Annually.
Annually.
Yeah.
For the next 5 years for us to pay for that.
To pay for that.
If you paid it off in 5 years.
Correct, if you paid it off in 5 years, that's correct.
Yeah, you would. I mean,
Yep,
that's-
so you do a one-time increase of, I'm gonna say 500 grand, which would be on the average household, $125 per year. And then you just keep that for the next 5 years. And then at the end of the 5 years, you just get rid of that.
Right, right.
Portion of the levy.
So then all of a sudden, 5 years from then, meaning 2029, 2030, we're going to come back to these residents and say, now I need another $400 a year annually to build fire station.
You're assuming everything's paid off in 5 years, though.
No, that a fire station?
Yeah, the
You're not going to
400.
pay a $20 million fire
You go
station in
20
5 years.
Is that 20 years?
Oh, yeah, that's
I think that's what
20
we
years.
figured out.
And the reason why
It's
is
gonna be
we're-
20.
We're gonna plan on doing a lot of facilities at the same time too.
It's more than just the fire station. It's a
Correct.
fire
We're-
station
we're-
and a city hall.
City Hall and a Public Works expansion and possibly something in LC Stevens for an event center that we haven't discussed and talked about with details. And they said those things are all in the plan, but they're all the same year to do a large facilities bond so that we get the best bang for our buck with dollars and amounts and
No,
whatever
that
else.
that makes sense. It's just a matter of, is
Correct.
that what people?
Is that what people want? I
is that
don't,
what
yeah.
people want?
Yep.
And again, maybe that gets back to our Leatherman survey. So.
That would be, I would agree.
But to me, that's where we need to be talking to some of these people. The residents got to know what we're talking about.
What are you suggesting then?
What are you missing?
A mailer.
How long is this pricing good?
This pricing would be probably good for about another 3 weeks.
The Memorial Day sale?
Well, and that's why I said it, roughly every quarter, we're talking $50,000 increase. So
Yeah.
when you think about over the next 4 years, it's 200,000, and then it's gonna be 215,000, and then 230,000 where we end up.
Correct.
Very
So
close to where.
If we get a change in the cancellation language, there's no downside of us
There's no
approving this
penalty.
now. Because when it comes to come due in 4 years, then the decisions really has to be made then. But if we don't order it now, the price will be more when we won't have it when it's scheduled to be delivered. So we push staff often to be like, hey, this item's on the CIP, why didn't you order it 2 years ago when we need it this year? Because we need it this year. In this case, we've done that and we have an out. As long as we don't go buy it from a competitor of theirs, we have an out. And so I don't see a downside to this, approving this.
When
I guess
did we
is
have
where
to
I'm at.
pay for the chassis and when was that?
We don't.
Nothing until the
4 years until the
Oh,
day.
that, then we lose the 200.
So you lose the discount for not paying it early.
We will need one. And it's just a matter of when, and
And I'm not saying we need it today, but I think we will need it in the approximately amount of time
right
it's going to
now,
take to build
it's
this.
looking like 3 years. I think
42 is the earliest, 48 is what is expected.
Yeah, 4 years.
So that's 4 years, which is why it's coming to you in front of you today.
Yeah.
If we expected it to be a 36-month build, we would have come to you next year.
Yeah. And
Based on the fact that CIP is out.
I think we all kind of knew this was coming. It's just the 2.5 is an ouch. But
It's also lower than we budgeted in the CIP, which is good news too.
well,
Yeah, but that's not till for
yeah.
4 more years. I mean, in the
Might
CIP.
be that price in 28.
It might, but we're going to get this price because we locked in early.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we lock in today, we will pay this price in 2020 when it comes delivery. If we do not, then it will be whatever price until we place the order. So this is this has been a difference we've had in the shift of COVID, is that we've had to order things way before we actually need them.
That's everything, yeah.
Because otherwise we don't see them, which is, examples even Marty's trucks. We ordered those in
Right.
21
Yeah,
and we
we're
saw them in
yeah,
20.
We're starting to see them come in.
Yeah, we saw them in 24. So, I mean, those are trucks, not.
I do, however, see no
Yeah.
benefit to paying for this early.
I
Absolutely zero.
would agree with that. Given the current interest rates and what over the next
It'll
3 or 4
cost
years
more
we
money
could
to pay for it
compound,
now.
I would agree that it's not. If there's a benefit, assuming we had the money today, which we don't, but if we had the money today or interest on it, I didn't sit on the math. But my guess is the benefit's going to be almost a wash. I will guess it's going to be almost a wash one way or the other without sitting down to the math just quick in my head.
Yes.
So based on that, I move this forward. I'll motion that we approve the purchase of this vehicle with the changed cancellation language that allows it so they can't charge us a fee if we just cancel. But they can still charge us the fee if we buy it from somebody else.
Yep.
So that's the motion I'll make. Based upon what I think is the right long-term choice, and we're out nothing, and we're just locking the lower price we're probably going to pay in 4 years anyways.
Staff is not recommending you pay early. just want to make sure that you know we are not.
Yep. I don't want
We
that
were
coming back.
we would come to you as staff and say, we recommend you paying early. We are
This
not
kind of
doing
rounds out everything we have.
This is
right?
everything.
Yep.
This kind of completes.
This would complete that, because we'd be able to shift things around, as I indicated.
Yep.
The other thing is too, is just as a reminder, if we're 2 years in and something changed financially for us, we have the ability to then, pay, if you wanted to, pay that 2.5 million then you'd still get a discounted rate. It would just be prorated or reduced based on what they provided.
And,
It's roughly 4% roughly per year if we pay early. So
And right now, we're getting 5 something, right?
yeah, right now we're earning 5.25.
Reason to do it, yeah.
You got it.
All right, I made the motion.
I need a second. I'll second it.
Oh, thank God.
Really? I wanted you to let Travis do it. He would have done it.
I totally would have.
I would have choked him a little bit to get it going.
Maybe a little. Would have reached.
I seen him fidgeting, so I figured.
I saw him fidgeting through.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
I'm gonna
opposed-
say aye because I won't be here when you gotta pay for it.
All right, I'll take that as an aye then. 5-0, that, all right. You got a ladder truck, that's, well,
4 years.
4 years. You got it.
okay, so we still have item S, item T, and it is pushing,
So we will
Let's
look for
just-
your direction, Mayor, of what you'd like to do for S&T.
Let's just push through. We're already here.
keep going.
And I gotta be up early tomorrow
It
morning,
shouldn't
but
take,
I'd rather
but-
just keep.
it shouldn't take but
So
5
let's-
minutes to get through both of these.
Let's go to S, ordinance updating tobacco cannabis use in public space.
Yep. Mayor and Member Council, these are items that came from in front of you in November of 2023. We are now bringing them back based on the fact that it fell off staff's radar. And we need to look for approval. We did adjust and amend based on direction at the November meeting and provided that in front of you today.
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second it, but I have a couple of questions.
Okay, discussion, go ahead.
All right. I gotta get to my 8 pages, okay. 212 is okay. There's a typo in here that I just can't live with.
Thank God you can spell, because I can't.
On page 215, there is, okay, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling around here a little bit. On 215, item number 2, I'm not sure what that's saying. It says, manufacture or delivery. It is unlawful for any person to intentionally manufacture paraphernalia. The end.
For delivery.
For delivery, sorry, I missed that. The end. I don't know what that means.
Mayor, members of the council, that change in the way that this is written is the underlined language is new, and the stricken language is what we're removing, what would be removed from the current code provisions. This language mirrors what is now in the state statute related to the changes that they made to drug paraphernalia in the 2023 legislative session.
So why are we,
What is the for delivery part? That's where I get lost.
So they can make it for themselves, but they can't deliver it to others? Is that the?
Essentially,
the
yes.
gist of it?
I think that's,
Yeah.
then you're really naughty.
Yeah.
Because you're manufacturing it and
Delivering it.
I just did, so is this kind of an echo of a state statute?
It is, yes.
So why is it in our code? I mean, that may seem silly, but.
It's not silly.
Okay.
We could strike it all together, or we could change it. The changes that we made to the ordinance, and Chief, chime in here if you want to. The changes that we made to the ordinance were to make it conform to the state statute more. There's no requirement that you have an ordinance
Yeah.
if law enforcement can rely on the state statute for enforcement.
That was kind of my
So
question.
rather than
is
strike it, we amend it.
Once you have kind of a mirror of state statute and local statute, now they gotta play this game of constantly keeping them up to date, or
That's right.
you're in conflict. And I don't know, maybe Chief, you can chime in, does it matter whether something's in a local ordinance or state statute to you guys?
Depends on prosecution of it. So we might not be able to charge under state statute, but with a minor penalty, but under ordinance we could.
So in some situations, it could help.
Correct. Because the state ordinance is taking a lot of authority away from law enforcement as far as paraphernalia in general. They're taking hypodermic needles to where people can have possession of them now.
Yeah.
So a lot of drug paraphernalia is going out the window. So it's, if you have it in ordinance, it still gives us an avenue to charge if we needed to.
Oh, see, you're talking about a superset of ordinances compared to the state statute.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was talking about stuff that mimicked state statute. Okay. More questions?
Did you get your answers clear as mud?
Well,
It sounds like that's the
if
state
it makes
statute.
sense to somebody, then I'm gonna be fine with it, because it's not gonna apply to me. But
Sounds good.
just saying.
You're not going to be involved?
I'm not gonna be delivering.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. And we are on to item T.
Okay, Mayor, members of council, in front of you, you have the approval of the ordinance that was discussed at the last meeting, 2024-07, incompatibility of offices for city council and part-time employees. We are looking for direction from city staff to amend the code by adding the new section into our current city code with the incompatibility of offices for city council and part-time employees. Approve or deny that direction and request. I will stand for any questions.
Well, I think given that I kind of initiated this,
Sorry, and then also I want to make sure that everyone knows on the staff report, it was noted that there was, all the options were given, there wasn't clear direction, there was back and forth at the last council meeting. Amy Schmidt and I worked together to try to figure out what's the best options to write in the ordinance, not trying to single anybody out or trying to single any certain situation out, just giving all the options. This can easily be amended and adjusted based on whatever you'd like to have in the ordinance, and then can be approved or denied depending on what you decide. But again, clear direction wasn't given at the last meeting, and apologize if you did give it, I didn't understand it, so.
So one question I had is around timing. It could be effective now, or it could be effective next year or something, and I guess it wasn't clear to me on what the implications of were of the timing of adoption.
Mayor, members of the council, the way that the ordinance is currently drafted, it would take effect upon publication of the ordinance unless you direct it otherwise. You could say that it would be effective after the first of the year, January 1st, 2025. And the impact of that would be that any council member who would be subject to the new regulations, it wouldn't affect their ability to file and run for office again in 2024.
That was just for part-time employees. That
Correct.
did not cover anybody else.
Correct. There's a state statute that specifically prohibits a full-time employee from serving on the city council. So
I was referring to the nonprofit board members. That wasn't in there to allow them to continue to run.
I'm sorry, can you
Yeah,
clarify your question?
that could be struck if we were to.
I know.
That should be struck out now. It shouldn't be in there now.
I, at this point,
So yeah, that was item E
I think-
on the, I believe what you're referencing,
Yeah.
Mayor.
In addition to providing
Right.
Is that in addition, it says that,
Serve on governing
no,
body.
yeah, that, no elected official shall serve on a governing body of a nonprofit or civic organization with ties to the city.
I think at this point,
Which can be struck, like I said, it's,
given
Not a big
that
problem.
I initiated this, I'm kind of, I think that the angst that it's causing, I think the time it's taking, I'm willing to either table it for a long time or just drop it. I think if we want to look at this, maybe after January 1 is something that we should target.
And Mayor, if I could interrupt one more time, if you
Yeah, go
look at section F of this, of the draft ordinance, it specifically says that it wouldn't apply to any person who is currently serving on the council if they are reelected in a consecutive term. So any member who would be elected this fall wouldn't be subject to this until they,
Yeah.
it would only apply to somebody else running for office. It wouldn't affect the current council members.
So given the mayor's comments, I'll motion that we deny this.
I want another comment, though.
Yeah, oh, okay. Okay,
Here's where I am on this deal.
I need a second.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's where I am on this deal. Clearly, the timing is way off. I mean, this was brought up probably 6 months ago and should have been handled a long time ago. And this new draft pretty much covers it. It takes you out of the equation.
Well, only for a certain period of time, but I think it goes
If you get
beyond
reelected
me.
for the next 10 years, you're still there.
Right, but the language, I think, I'm looking beyond myself here at this point. Like, I know 30 guys that, have the energy and potentially have the want to serve their residents as well, outside of just, the confines, I guess, of the.
This isn't for the mayor, but there's clearly via email, there's a direct link to try to, and I'll read the emails if we need to, but we all saw them. The perception of this among the public is that there is a direct link trying to limit Travis as an individual from doing this. I know we can change language, that's not the case. We don't need to get into the email. If these people are good enough to run in a house and pull me out or pull my child, I have no problem if they sit up here and make decisions for the city. I trust their ethical basis and their want to serve their community, and that's where I stand on it. So, again, I'll motion that we deny this based upon the mayor's comments. We have a second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, this
You
one.
got a thought on your lips, I can see it.
Well, I'm going to not talk about the typo. One point I saw in here that was, that I hadn't really thought through, but I think is pretty valid. It's number 2 on page 225, says such a parent or actual conflicts of interest could compel an elected official to recuse from participation in decisions of the full council, and such recusals limits the ability of the elected official to fully represent the interests of the resident of the city, thereby depriving residents of full representation in all matters before the council. And I think that, what struck me about this piece of it is that when you have to recuse yourself from a discussion and a vote, then your feelings, your opinions, your experience, whatever you're bringing to the table on that, doesn't get included in it. And so it sort of limits the role because of that apparent conflict of interest. And I think that's a valid consideration, that it does cut into the overall validity of the council representing the entire community. Past that, I mean, can we point to any specific instances where it would have made a difference if it was somebody else sitting in that chair? I don't know. You know, I think that we have a strong contingent of support for the fire department. I worry while that's an important part of our job, our charge here is to make sure that we provide an adequate level of public safety. I don't want it to be outsized because of affiliations with the fire department, and that's the part of it that's troubling to me. You know, is it enough to say that we can't, that we shouldn't allow anybody to run? I go back and forth on this all the time.
That's always conflicts of interest.
I know we've got a
I'd say.
motion on the table. I would rather table it than have to vote on it today, but we've got a motion, so we're
Table it for how long? I mean, so we can table this, but I mean, in the end, in 6 months, or if somebody, it couldn't be brought up again.
Even if we deny it, it can be brought up again
Yeah.
in 6 months. So it doesn't really change the table or deny it, in my mind, for the end effect. I have a question more to Amy based on something that David had said. So if I recuse myself from a vote, am I allowed to comment on it, even though I'm not going to vote on it? Because in the past, some of us have recused ourselves and have made comments. I don't know it's right or wrong, but the point you brought up, I'd just like clarity on that.
You want clarity from a
Yeah,
lawyer?
I know. I would like a yes or to give Scott. I'd like a yes or no question.
I'm just tell you with
There are
mumbo
certain
jumbo.
situations where you would have to both recuse from the participation and from the vote. That's where if you had an interest in a contract that was being approved by the council. If it's a situation like this where it's an ordinance that affects you, then, you know, I think there's no hard and fast rule. So it's really a lot of the rules when it comes to conflicts of interest and how an elected official handles that is kind of up to their own personal judgment of their ability to be neutral and weigh all of the facts and information fairly and that sort of thing. There's no hard and fast rule except in those specific situations where you have a direct financial interest, or it's a direct financial interest of a family member of yours, or you have a party to a contract that is going to do the community survey or something like that for the city. But it really, a lot of the time, comes down to just the personal judgment of the elected official about whether they can be fair and impartial.
So you're referring to whether or not they should abstain. I think, weren't you asking about giving the reason for abstention?
I'm more thinking of, and I'm going to pick on you if that's okay. So no, you abstained for voting on something with the property in the river. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Neighbors.
Yeah. But I think you still, and this is to get not or not, I think you still commented on, like, here's what's going on, here's what my neighbors think, here's what I think, so that we were all aware. So you were able to get the opinion and information of those around you, but you didn't vote. And to me, I appreciate that, because that's why they elected you, is to represent them. So you saw the opportunity to voice on their behalf, but you didn't vote on their behalf because you had signed the petition as well. So that's the example I was trying to understand, which I think it's a balance. Maybe the crux of what you were talking about, which made me think about, like, okay, how do we really handle that?
Everything about conflict of interest is kind of a balance.
It is.
Whenever we cut taxes recently, every one of us benefited. And it was a big benefit, but I think nobody would look at that as a conflict.
Somebody has to vote on it.
Yeah. We've over the past number of years, we've had some planning commission issues where we say this isn't quite right. It's to me it's a hard one to look at, and to say you really should abstain, or if you look at it and think this really has no interest in me, even though I'm kind of related to it. I know not long ago we had somebody here that owned property on where was it at? Oh, it was just next to, it was just on Raintree, on whatchamacallit? Balsam. And he abstained, and I thought that's odd, because all those people on that road just lost their representation because he'd abstained. But he felt that whatever they were voting on was significant enough to where he should stay out of it. But it's always a question, and it's always a sliding thing.
Thank you.
I have heard in the past that, in fact, I think this is a Long Lake mayor, it doesn't matter, made the claim that when you abstained, you had to give a reason. Now, my understanding is, at least since we claim to follow Robert's rules says you do not have to give a reason.
That's right.
And that's, okay.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, that's, all right, well, we beat this up again. So we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? And this is to deny it.
So this is, oh, no, we're on that, okay.
This is to deny that ordinance. Any more discussion?
Just the one thing here, right on page 219, it says general incompatibility. You're in a supervisor role, right? It specifically says, or are you not, a
I don't
lieutenant?
have the ability to hire, fire, reprimand, any of that kind of stuff, I guess,
okay,
as
so
far
you're
as it
covered here
relates
then.
to the fire
Okay,
department,
yep.
so.
All right. I thought maybe you did.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and discussion is over. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. Anybody abstaining?
Mr. Solonic, what would you vote?
I went along with it.
Okay.
I went along with it. I mean, to me, it covers. He's out of the equation anyway, so.
Aye. All right, it's an aye, 5-0.
I'm glad it wasn't just me, Mayor.
I want to confirm that was to deny the whole ordinance.
Just to
Yeah.
deny.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I don't think you've ever done anything to benefit yourself financially.
No, and I think I have my track record proved that.
Yeah.
That's-
My only deal is.
Okay, closed session, right?
Yep, closed session.
Do we have to read
Okay.
something?
Yes.
Does the mayor have like?
Closed section.
Did I give it to him?
Oh,
Really drain this
how
today,
you
guys.
doing?
I'm
All right, all right. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Actually, Mayor, if you could adjourn the regular meeting, 'cause
Can we do that before the closed session?
yes.
I thought we had to.
The closed meeting is actually technically a separate special.
It is.
So go ahead. Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Like to adjourn.
You can
All right.
adjourn.
We're gonna adjourn when
If there are no objections, we'll be adjourned. All right, we're adjourned.
We're adjourned, yep. So we're going to adjourn the meeting and then we're going to have a closed session with Big Easier. Yes, Chris, you're good.
So what usually I get told to do is open the closed meeting during the other meeting.